Chapter 374. Hearing the words of the elder from the Spicer family, Marquis Cumberland smiled and did not reply. If this was a few days ago, Nielsen would have been a good choice. He was a descendant of the Marquis family and extremely talented. It was entirely possible for him to become a barbarian blood warrior in the future. Both his background and power were great, and he was indeed an extremely suitable candidate to marry into the family. However, there was a saying that there would be no harm if there was no comparison. After seeing how outstanding Gray was, Marquis Cumberland realized that Nielsen was not that outstanding either. Although Gray did not have the background of the Marquis family and was only a descendant of a noble family, his own strength and potential made up for this deficiency and even surpassed it. Although he was not born into the Marquis family, the strength he possessed was already not inferior to the Marquis family. Furthermore, he was already a barbarian blood warrior at such a young age. It was inevitable that he would become a desolate blood warrior in the future, and even a king warrior was possible. In comparison, Nielsen's excellence was undoubtedly greatly reduced. Whether it was in terms of strength or potential, he was far inferior to Gray. Not getting a response from Marquis Cumberland, the elder from the Spicer family frowned slightly. However, he quickly relaxed and did not say anything more. He knew that going too far was as bad as not going far enough. The group set off again. Every time they encountered a berserk blood fiend, Nielsen would take the initiative to cooperate with Jessie and give her the final credit. His gentlemanly behavior was unmistakable, and it caused the other members of the Cumberland family to have a good impression of him. Young Master Nielsen and Sister Jessie are indeed very compatible. In comparison, that descendant of a noble family is far inferior. He doesn't even dare to make a move and only knows how to hide under the protection of others. A descendant of the Cumberland family said softly. "Humph, what do you know?" Audrey happened to hear this and was immediately displeased. In the eyes of others, Gray did not make a move because he was timid and did not dare to. However, to her, who knew Gray's strength, Gray did not make a move because he did not care to. Her father, the elder from the Spicer family, did not make a move either. Even her father felt inferior to him. Wasn't it natural that he did not make a move? "Audrey, I'm just saying." Seeing that Audrey was angry, this branch descendant of the Cumberland family could only smile embarrassedly. The marriage of a direct descendant was such an important matter, and it wasn't something he could casually meddle in. Of course, in his heart, he still disapproved of Gray. Without strength, he didn't even have the courage to fight. The patriarch wouldn't consider such a person. "Just you wait, he'll surprise you." Sensing that the other party still didn't care about Gray, Audrey wanted to tell him about Gray's strength, but she held back after thinking about it. There was no point in saying it now. Furthermore, even if he said it, these people might not necessarily believe him. When it was time to hunt the scarlet flame tiger, and let these people witness it with their own eyes, the effect would definitely be even better. It would definitely cause their jaws to drop to the ground. Thinking of this, she couldn't be bothered to pay attention to this branch family descendant and directly left. She was already looking forward to seeing these people's stunned faces. A few days later, the group arrived at the area where the crimson flame tiger had once been discovered by the Cumberland family. "We're close. Be careful." "Yes," Marquis Cumberland solemnly instructed, and the others responded cautiously. If an accident were to happen when facing a berserk-level blood fiend, Marquis Cumberland would still be able to save them in time. However, if an accident were to happen when facing a berserk-level blood fiend, even Marquis Cumberland might not be able to save them in time. At this point, Marquis Cumberland and the elder from the Spicer family walked out from the group and vaguely walked in front. Gray, on the other hand, took the initiative to retreat a little and walked at the back of the group. Danger didn't necessarily come from the front. It could also come from the back. Therefore, he didn't walk in front of the group like the other two, but walked at the back of the group. This was a forest with luxuriant foliage. The trees were extremely lush, and each of the giant trees was at least 10 meters tall. They were like giant umbrellas that completely blocked the sky. Rustle, rustle. A group of more than 20 people walked in the forest. The sound of their feet stepping on the withered leaves could be heard clearly. They could even hear the slightly heavy breathing of the people beside them due to their nervousness. In front of them, a giant tree that was more than 30 meters tall had collapsed, revealing an empty space. Rays of sunlight shone through the gloomy forest, soothing the gloomy environment. Some people subconsciously exhaled a turbid breath and looked at the giant tree. The next moment, their pupils involuntarily shrank. What a huge claw print! There was a huge claw print on the giant tree. Not only had the giant tree snapped, but it had also almost pierced through the trunk of the giant tree. Judging from the depth, the claw was at least 30 to 40 centimeters long. It wasn't difficult to determine the size of the claw. It was at least left behind by a giant beast that was more than 6 meters tall. The answer to such a huge claw print in this area was already very obvious. This is the claw print of a crimson flame tiger. Other than Gray, the Marquis of Cumberland, and the elder from the Spicer family, everyone else had a grave look on their faces. Some even paled. Nielsen and Jessica were no exception. Although the combat power of a blood fiend was not absolutely related to its body size, under normal circumstances, the larger its body size, the stronger its combat power. A blood fiend that was more than 6 meters tall would definitely have immense physical strength. Just its physical strength alone was definitely enough to annihilate all of them except for the barbaric blood warriors. It's here. Suddenly, Gray let out a low growl. The look in his eyes suddenly became sharp. He looked unblinkingly in a direction as if he could see through the dense forest. Where is it? The few people beside him were shocked at first. After looking around and not finding anything, they could not help but look suspiciously at Gray. However, their suspicions quickly disappeared. Rustle, rustle, rustle. A series of sounds came from afar. The trees were obviously shaking violently, and the direction was the direction Gray was looking at. Soon, the figure of a giant tiger appeared. Its body was 6 meters long and its entire body was white. There were natural red patterns in the white, as if a red flame was burning. Roar! There was the word King on its forehead, and its body was emitting a violent and overbearing aura. With a tiger's roar, the forest shook and leaves rustled. An invisible pressure pressed down on everyone's heart. Crimson Flame Tiger. This was the first time many people had seen a crimson flame tiger, but they all subconsciously called out its name. Its appearance was really too compatible with the name Crimson Flame Tiger. It was hard not to recognize it. Gotcha! Discovering the enemy, the Crimson Flame Tiger roared. A giant tree that was dozens of meters tall was smashed by its claw. Even the surrounding trees were smashed. The violent power was undeniable. Everyone who saw it felt a chill in their hearts. With such violent power, even a berserk blood warrior would be smashed into meat paste if they were hit. Whoosh! The tiger opened its mouth and could easily swallow a person. A huge red flame spewed out, burning and collapsing a large area of trees in front of it. Then, it moved on the fallen trees, leaping through the flames and pouncing towards Gray's group. Huff! Marquis Cumberland held a green spear and took the initiative to meet the Crimson Flame Tiger. On the spear, a huge green wind blade suddenly appeared and slashed towards the Crimson Flame Tiger. Poof! More than 10 fallen trees were sliced in half, leaving a perfectly straight trail. The Crimson Flame Tiger was huge, but its body was agile. It dodged the green wind blade with a single shift and continued to pounce towards Marquis Cumberland. At this moment, the elder of the Spicer family appeared. Under his feet, a large number of shadow tentacles appeared. They were extremely sharp and attacked the Crimson Flame Tiger. Whoosh! The Crimson Flame Tiger opened its huge mouth and spat out red flames again. As the tiger's mouth swayed, it burned in a fan shape. Sizzle, sizzle. All the shadow tentacles melted quickly like snow under the sun. All the shadow tentacles were incinerated. The remaining flames attacked the elder of the Spicer family. On the spear in Marquis Cumberland's hand, another green wind blade appeared and extinguished the remaining flames. It was just the first exchange, but the surrounding 100 meters were already filled with flames. The trees were completely flattened and the sun shone down. The air was filled with scorching heat and no longer felt cold. The terrifying destructive power of the three was undeniable. Compared to them, the mad level was not on the same level. Retreat. Jessia and the rest were shocked and retreated. Retreat, Nielsen also exclaimed and retreated continuously. Although he had the strength of a mad level warrior, this level of battle was not something he could participate in. At this moment, he was surprised to find that Gray was advancing instead of retreating. He was walking towards the place where the three parties were fighting. "You're courting death," he sneered in his heart. Even he could not participate in a battle of this level. The other party actually wanted to participate in the battle. It was no different from courting death. He understood the other party's thoughts. He wanted to show off his bravery in this battle to attract attention. After all, he was facing a barbarian-level blood fiend. If he could survive, he would definitely be seen in a new light. However, in his opinion, the other party's actions were purely courting death. He was too familiar with a barbarian-level battle. That level of battle was not something a mad level could participate in unless there were more than 10 of them. Moreover, they had to be fearless and prepared to sacrifice more than half of them. "Come back, you're courting death. Do you want to die?" Although some of the collateral members of the Cumberland family did not like Gray, he was still following the Cumberland family. If anything happened to him, the Cumberland family would have to bear the responsibility. Hence, they could not help but remind him. However, they did not notice that among them, there were 2 people who were looking at Gray with gazes filled with curiosity, anticipation, and a trace of admiration. These 2 people were Jasha and Audrey. Chapter 375. Roar. The Crimson Tiger's roar shook the forest, causing leaves to fall. With a leap, it pounced in front of Marquis Cumberland, revealing its sharp claws and clawing at Marquis Cumberland. Marquis Cumberland thrust his spear forward, but at this moment, the Crimson Tiger twisted its body and dodged the thrust. It continued to claw at Marquis Cumberland. Bang! Marquis Cumberland's spear swept horizontally and blocked the claw. The violent collision was like the collision of a comet. The sound waves swept out and the surrounding trees and leaves were all shaken by the sound wave. The Crimson Tiger and Marquis Cumberland retreated quickly. The Crimson Tiger opened its huge mouth, and a crimson flame gushed out like a river. Marquis Cumberland was not to be outdone. He also released a stream of crimson flame like a river. Rumble! The 2 streams of flame collided and a terrifying shockwave spread out. Everything within dozens of meters was blown away, whether it was rocks or trees. At this moment, the Spicer family elder appeared beside the Crimson Tiger like a ghost. He held his sword with both hands and slashed down with great force. The Crimson Tiger dodged, but the Spicer family elder cultivated a special blood technique. His combat power was not inferior to the Crimson Tiger's, so it was not that easy to dodge. The long sword swept across the Crimson Tiger's back. Poof! A rather deep wound appeared on the Scarlet Flame Tiger's back. Its gigantic body was sent flying backwards, and the place where it landed was coincidentally extremely close to Gray. The Crimson Tiger immediately noticed the tiny Gray. It temporarily gave up on Marquis Cumberland and the Spicer family elder. It turned around and extended its sharp claws. Its huge tiger claws swept out horizontally. "Be careful! Dodge quickly!" Many people's expressions changed and could not help but remind him. The Crimson Tiger's sharp claws flickered with a black light. They were as sharp as divine weapons. If this claw scratched Gray's body, he would probably be cut into several pieces and die on the spot. Some people had already let out a sigh. If they were in the same situation, they would definitely not be able to dodge it. Hence, in their opinion, Gray was almost certainly going to die. Die. Nielsen sneered in his heart, and the corners of his mouth even curled up into a sneer. Ever since they entered the night forest, Gray had never made a move, but the Jessia sisters did not underestimate him at all. This made him secretly hate Gray, and he did not understand what was so good about him that the Jessia sisters would treat him so differently. But now, as long as the other party was dead, nothing else mattered. He believed that as long as the other party was dead, with his methods and identity, he would definitely be able to slowly capture Jacia's heart and marry into the Cumberland family, slowly taking control of the Cumberland family in his own hands. Chi. The huge claws clawed down, leaving several long cracks on the ground that extended for several meters. This was a terrifying blow, a blow that was enough to kill a berserker. However, in the surroundings, there was no Gray's blood spurting out, nor was there a corpse that had been cut into several pieces. Not to mention a corpse, there wasn't even a trace of blood. Before the crowd had time to be surprised, they saw a flash of lightning, and the Crimson Tiger's huge body was instantly lifted off the ground. It rolled and flew backwards, finally crashing heavily into the ground in the distance. There was a clear scorch mark on the Crimson Tiger's chest, and the fur around it had completely disappeared as if it had been burned, revealing the charred flesh. In Gray's hand, a long sword was already in his hand. Purple lightning surged on the surface of the long sword, winding around the sword like snakes. It was densely packed, making the long sword thicker by more than 10 times. It was a sight that made one's heart palpitate. He dodged the Crimson Tiger's attack and even injured it? Are our eyes playing tricks on us? The Cumberland family's collateral family members and the Cumberland family's guards were all dumbfounded, their jaws almost dropping to the ground. What had happened in front of their eyes was completely different from what they had expected. For a moment they did not dare to believe it. Is this what Audrey meant by what she said earlier? The Cumberland family's collateral family member, who had looked down on Gray and angered Audrey, was both shocked and enlightened at the same time. He finally understood what Audrey meant when she said, "I'll give you a big shock." Now he was not just shocked, he was extremely shocked, so shocked that he could not be any more shocked. The person he had looked down on these past few days was actually able to injure the Crimson Tiger. How powerful was he to be able to do that? How could this be? Nielsen's eyes were filled with shock and fury. As a berserker, he clearly understood what kind of strength was required to do what Lin Huang had done. If there were no surprises, Lin Huang was most likely a berserker. This made him extremely furious. If Lin Huang was a berserker, then no matter how stunning his previous performance was, in the eyes of the Cumberland family members, it was probably just so. After all, there was a better reference. Damn it, is this guy really a descendant of a noble family? Why did he appear? Why did he appear and ruin my plans? He was extremely dissatisfied. With Lin Huang's appearance, the Cumberland family would not easily come to a conclusion on the matter of marrying into the family. Whoosh! Everyone else was shocked. Even the Spicer family's elder could not help but be shocked. However, Marquis Cumberland was not. He was already clear about Gray's strength. With a dash, he appeared beside the Crimson Tiger on the ground. His spear was wrapped in crimson flames. Using both his blood beast ability and physical ability, he stabbed the spear towards the Crimson Tiger's heart. The Crimson Tiger instinctively turned and dodged, avoiding the vital point of its heart. However, it was still ruthlessly stabbed by the spear, and a huge charred hole appeared on its body. Marquis Cumberland pulled out his spear and stabbed it again. Roar! The Crimson Tiger roared angrily. It had been injured repeatedly, and now it was seriously injured, so it immediately went berserk. Its huge eyes seemed to be burning with crimson flames. Then, its entire body was covered in crimson flames, as if it was a ferocious beast bred in flames. The surrounding ground was full of charred marks. The ground near the Crimson Tiger was actually melting into crimson magma. Bang! A huge flaming claw slammed onto the shaft of Marquis Cumberland's spear, and Marquis Cumberland retreated continuously. "Be careful, it's going berserk." Marquis Cumberland only managed to stabilize himself after retreating for a few dozen meters. He warned solemnly. At this moment, the Spicer family's elder reacted. Countless shadow tentacles turned into a huge cage, trying to bind the Crimson Tiger's suit in the cage. Sizzle sizzle. However, the crimson flames on the Crimson Tiger's body were inexplicably terrifying. Even the air was distorted. With just a charge, the shadow tentacle's cage was broken. Then, a crimson flame river rushed towards the Spicer family's elder. The Spicer family's elder's expression changed. A large number of shadow tentacles appeared from beneath his feet and turned into a huge black wall, blocking the crimson flames. However, the crimson flames seemed to have a strong restraining effect on shadow-type abilities. The black wall was penetrated, but a portion of the crimson flames still penetrated the wall and attacked the Spicer family's elder. Bang! The long sword in the Spicer family's elder's hand flashed with golden light. Then, his entire body was covered in a layer of gold. The crimson flames crashed onto his body and were blocked by the layer of gold outside his body. However, he was also pushed back by the impact. In the end, the golden light shattered directly. The Crimson Tiger chased after the Spicer family's elder. Marquis Cumberland and Grey appeared, one on the left and one on the right. They blocked the Crimson Tiger that was pouncing towards the Spicer family's elder. Purple lightning surged on the longsword in Grey's hand. It even spread out and turned into a lightning longsword that was a few meters long. The crimson flames on Marquis Cumberland's long spear were like swimming dragons. The surrounding air vibrated violently. That was the result of the terrifyingly high temperature. Puff puff. Facing the combined attacks of Grey and Marquis Cumberland, the Crimson Tiger's body was covered in wounds one after another. Suddenly, the Crimson Tiger roared furiously. Then, the crimson flames that were coiling around its body suddenly shot out in all directions like a ring of flames. Grey and Marquis Cumberland, one wielding a sword and the other thrusting a spear, blocked the flames that were coming towards them. However, they were also pushed back by the shock wave of the explosion. When the flames dissipated, all the trees within a 100-meter radius around the Crimson Tiger had been burned to ashes. The earth and rocks had cracked and turned into scorched earth. The Crimson Tiger furiously glared at Grey and the other two. Then, it chose a direction that was different from the three of them and fled. Although it was a blood fiend, it still had a certain level of intelligence. When it sensed that Grey and the other two's combat power was not inferior to its own, the Crimson Tiger resolutely chose to flee. "Oh no, stop it!" Marquis Cumberland shouted. If they let the Crimson Flame Tiger escape, then all their efforts today would be for naught. Moreover, the Cumberland family had spent several months searching for this Crimson Flame Tiger. If they wanted to find another Crimson Flame Tiger, it would probably take several more months. However, now that Jessie was already a berserker, the bloodline implantation was imminent. If they delayed any longer, it would definitely affect the progress of her cultivation. This was something he absolutely did not want to see. Whoosh! Grey made his move. A green river suddenly descended from the sky like a river of stars above the 9 heavens, crashing into the Crimson Tiger's body with a loud bang. A vast expanse of white cold air crashed into the Crimson Tiger's body, instantly freezing it. Then, numerous wind blades hacked at the Crimson Tiger's body in a concentrated manner. In an instant, the Crimson Tiger's body was covered in wounds. Whoosh! Grey rushed forward. Lightning flashed on his sword, and he stabbed the Crimson Flame Tiger in the chest, leaving a huge wound on the Crimson Flame Tiger's chest. Taking advantage of the fact that the Crimson Tiger had yet to break free from the ice on its body, he stabbed the same spot with his sword. Puff! The long sword pierced through the Crimson Tiger's heart like a hot knife through butter. The Crimson Tiger died on the spot. Chapter 376. So strong. Seeing that Grey had suppressed the Crimson Tiger the moment he used his blood fiends, and had killed the Crimson Tiger with his own strength, the sisters' eyes shone with extraordinary splendor. Although they already knew that Grey had the strength of a barbarian blood warrior, and was so strong that even their father felt ashamed of his inferiority, they still couldn't help but be greatly shocked when they saw Grey's valiant strength for themselves. Anyone with a discerning eye could see that Grey's strength was a level above the Crimson Tiger's. If Grey wanted to, he didn't even need the cooperation of Marquis Cumberland and the Spicer family's elder. He could kill the Crimson Tiger alone. His age was not much different from theirs, but he already had such valiant strength. That kind of valiance shocked them, and they couldn't help but be attracted to him. Not only does he have the strength of a barbarian blood warrior, but his battle strength has also reached the second stage of a barbarian blood warrior. Nielsen's fingernails had already dug deep into his flesh, but he didn't notice at all. He looked at Grey with a gloomy expression, the hatred in his heart surging like a great river. He knew that his plan to show off his excellence in front of the Cumberland family had completely failed. With the other party's stunning performance, no matter how outstanding his performance was, it would be difficult for him to receive much praise, unless he could display a strength stronger than Grey Fergus. But that was absolutely impossible. He wasn't even a barbarian blood warrior now, so how could he compare to the other party, who was very likely at the second stage of a barbarian blood warrior? Grey Fergus is actually so strong. Why do I feel that he's even stronger than the Marquis? The Cumberland family's collateral family members and guards all looked at Grey, who was standing beside the Crimson Tiger's huge corpse, with reverence in their eyes. It was completely reasonable that they didn't make a move earlier. With the other party's strength that was stronger than Marquis Cumberland's, if he made a move, they wouldn't have any chance to train. The other party was completely thinking for them. Kacha. With a crisp sound, the magic sword in Grey's hand that had accompanied him for many years broke into two and fell to the ground. Can I trouble you to collect the blood? Throwing away the remaining half of the sword, Grey used his ice ability to quickly defrost the Crimson Flame Tiger. He retreated to the side and had someone collect the blood. After his strength reached the level of a barbarian blood warrior, the magic sword in his hand was almost negligible to his fighting strength. Therefore, in the battle just now, he didn't activate the ability of the magic sword itself. Instead, he attached his own lightning ability to the magic sword to fight. In the end, under the violent lightning, the demonic sword finally couldn't withstand it and completely broke apart. It seems I'll have to pay attention to the auctions of bronze-ranked mana swords in the future. With the power of his Blood Fiend ability, black iron-ranked magical weapons could no longer withstand the power of his ability. At most, they would be destroyed after a few battles. Only magical weapons of bronze-ranked and above could withstand it. Grey had 4 bronze-ranked mana weapons in his possession. One of them was a dagger obtained from the Imperial ruins that had the ability to poison. The other 3 were blade-type magical weapons obtained from the 3 barbarian blood warriors of the Wallen family. Among them, the blade-type magical weapon obtained from the graveyard of the kings was the strongest. Its grade should have reached the peak of bronze rank. The 4 magical weapons were not the sword-type magical weapons that Grey used most often. Although it wasn't that he couldn't use them, it would undoubtedly affect his fighting strength. Therefore, he needed to obtain a bronze-ranked sword-type magical weapon as soon as possible. Grey, thank you so much this time. The Marquis of Cumberland and the Jessica sisters walked over, smiling as they thanked Grey. It was the right decision to ask him for help. If it weren't for his presence today, they might not have been able to capture the Crimson Flame Tiger. Perhaps the Crimson Flame Tiger would have escaped. At least half of the credit for being able to kill the Crimson Flame Tiger was due to him. Even the experienced and knowledgeable Marquis Cumberland couldn't help but feel shocked by his valiant strength. He deeply felt the terrifying potential of this young man in front of him. No need. Gray smiled as he shook his head. I should be the one thanking you. If it weren't for your information, I'm afraid it would be extremely difficult for me to find the silver-armored rhinoceros on my own. While the Cumberland family was searching for the blaze, it was inevitable that they would encounter other types of blood fiends. Coincidentally, someone had seen the silver-armored rhinoceros that Gray was looking for. From the Cumberland family, Gray had already learned of a place where the silver-armored rhinoceros had once appeared and obtained a clear map. Since the Crimson Flame Tiger has been killed, I'll bid you farewell here. You're preparing to hunt the silver-armored rhinoceros? Jessica asked with a slight frown. Yes, I want to hurry over as soon as possible to prevent the silver-armored rhinoceros from migrating if I take too long. Gray nodded. Do you need my help? Marquis Cumberland asked seriously. Thank you for your kind intentions, Marquis, but there's no need. Gray thanked him solemnly. Marquis Cumberland offered to help without asking for anything in return, which made Gray feel a little embarrassed. After all, not only did Gray receive a reward for killing the Crimson Flame Tiger, but he also asked the Cumberland family to provide him with information on the silver-armored rhinoceros. In the end, Gray, Marquis Cumberland, and Jessica agreed to visit each other when they were free in the future. After that, he left the Cumberland family and headed toward the silver-armored rhinoceros. Father, although Gray is extremely powerful, the silver-armored rhinoceros is one of the most difficult types of barbaric-level blood fiends to deal with. Could it be? Jessica asked worriedly. That fellow won't be chased by the silver-armored rhinoceros, right? Although Audrey appeared to be unconcerned, she was actually a little worried. The silver-armored rhinoceros was a barbaric-level blood fiend with an extremely strong defense. Although its combat strength was not comparable to a special barbaric-level blood fiend, it was more difficult to deal with than a special barbaric-level blood fiend. Its body was made of copper and its bones were as hard as iron. Even a special barbaric-level blood fiend could only retreat if it encountered one. They were a little worried that Gray would not be able to kill it and that he would not be injured because of it. Marquis Cumberland looked at his two daughters in amusement. They had only known each other for a short period of time, but they were already so concerned about each other. He did not point it out. Don't worry. With his strength, it shouldn't be a problem. Besides, did you think that what he displayed just now was all of his strength? Still not all of his strength? Jessica's and Audrey's pupils involuntarily shrank, and a look of shock appeared in the depths of their eyes. With such powerful strength, it was still not all of the other party's strength? This was simply too unbelievable. As far as I know, not only is his combat strength extremely strong, but his defense is also extremely strong. It should not be inferior to the silver-armored rhinoceros. Marquis Cumberland said. He actually has a defense that is not inferior to the silver-armored rhinoceros? Monster, that fellow is simply a monster. Jessica's eyes were filled with shock, while Audrey let out a strange cry. Not only was his combat strength extremely strong, comparable to a second-stage barbaric-level existence, but his defense was also extremely strong, not inferior to the silver-armored rhinoceros. For such an opponent, strong was not enough to describe him. He could only be described as a monster. Walking to a corner, Nielsen and the Spicer family's elder whispered to each other. Granduncle, with that fellow here, I'm afraid I don't have a chance. Can you inform the family and let them kill him? Nielsen's eyes were filled with murderous intent as he spoke. Don't provoke him. If you meet him in the future, avoid him immediately. The Spicer family's elder shook his head, his face grave. As a barbaric blood warrior, he knew very well how strong the other party's combat strength was. If they wanted to kill the other party, the Spicer family would probably have to use all their resources and even pay the price of casualties. Moreover, He had a feeling that the other party had hidden his strength too deeply. His performance in the battle just now was too calm, and what he displayed might not be his full strength. It was obviously not a wise choice to recklessly make an enemy out of someone with such terrifying strength and great potential. What about marrying into the family? Nielsen asked unwillingly. With the other party here, I'm afraid your chances are not high. Let's return to the family first. A few days later, Gray arrived at the area marked on the map where the silver-horned rhinoceros was previously found. In the distance there was a mountain range. One after another, majestic and huge mountains connected together like a crouching dragon. The protrusions on the mountains were like the sharp horns on the dragon's body. Surrounded by the mountains, a basin appeared. This was the place where the silver-horned rhinoceros was previously found. The huge basin was very wide and extended for dozens of miles. Gray began to search in the basin. However, after a few hours, he did not find the silver-horned rhinoceros. He did find a few traces of giant beasts, but he did not know if they were left behind by the silver-horned rhinoceros. Could it be that the silver-horned rhinoceros has moved away? Gray raised his eyebrows. Blood fiends had a strong sense of territory, but it did not mean that they would not leave their original territory. Perhaps it was because of a strong enemy or a lack of food, blood fiends would move away from their original territory. He was now worried that the silver-horned rhinoceros might have left its territory because of one of these two reasons. Let's try to create a huge commotion. After thinking for a while, Gray released the iron-armed barbarian ape. The iron-armed barbarian ape had suffered heavy injuries during the battle with the Wallen family. Large chunks of flesh on its back and abdomen had been torn off. Its iron arms, which had a terrifying defense, were also full of cracks. However, under the effect of the reverse nurturing ability, all of its injuries had healed. Even its iron arms that were full of cracks had recovered. Boom! Under Gray's control, the iron-armed barbarian ape punched out. A huge tree that required several people to wrap their arms around it collapsed with a loud bang. The area that was hit by the iron-armed barbarian ape was completely pulverized into sawdust. However, this was not the end. The iron-armed barbarian ape strode forward. Every step it took was accompanied by the collapse of huge trees and flying rocks. Blood fiends had a strong sense of territory. When they discovered that other blood fiends were wantonly destroying their territory, they would definitely rush over. Now, he could only hope that the silver-horned rhinoceros had not retreated and was still somewhere in the basin. When it heard the commotion, it would rush over. After more than an hour, Gray controlled the iron-armed barbarian ape to stop. It had already traversed the basin several times. There were many ordinary blood fiends that had fled in fear, but there were no powerful blood fiends that came to greet them. At this point, he was certain that there were no longer any silver-horned rhinoceros in this basin. Chapter 377. Let's hope it's not too far away. Gray shook his head helplessly. He was certain that the silver rhinoceros was no longer in the basin. Otherwise, with the silver rhinoceros personality, it would be impossible for it not to appear. Now, he could only hope that it was not too far away from the basin. Otherwise, it would be difficult to find it. Suddenly, Gray saw large traces of a battle in front of him. Giant trees had collapsed, mountain rocks were shattered, and huge gullies that were dozens of meters long could be seen everywhere. These were caused by the rolling of the bodies of the blood fiends during the battle. Occasionally, he could see large pits with diameters of more than 10 meters. There were no signs of fire or lightning from the blood fiends. It seemed that the blood fiends had used their physical strength to create these pits during the battle. What powerful strength! Seeing these large pits, Gray's pupils shrank. Even though Gray had reached the brute level, he did not think that he could cause such damage with just physical strength. Judging from the traces at the scene, it should be caused by a battle between two physical-type blood fiends. There were no traces of elemental-type blood fiends at the scene. There was only damage caused by pure physical collision. Hence, Gray guessed that the two blood fiends fighting should be physical-type blood fiend. One of them is probably the silver rhinoceros. I wonder what kind of blood fiend the other one is? The silver rhinoceros had appeared in the nearby area, and there were traces of a battle between two physical-type blood fiends nearby. If he was not mistaken, one of the two physical-type blood fiends was very likely the silver rhinoceros. That is, walking along the traces of destruction, Gray's pupils suddenly shrank, and he quickly walked forward. In front of him, there was a large skeleton stained with blood and flesh that appeared in front of Gray. Judging from the fact that the blood and flesh had not completely rotted away, the time of death should be a few days ago. This was a very large skeleton. Its body was 7 meters long, and its body was very wide. It was filled with huge bones. There were 2 horns, one long and one short, on its skull. Its 4 feet did not have sharp claws. Instead, they were flat hooves like those of a cow. There are 2 horns on its head, one long and one short. Its 4 feet are hoof-shaped like a cow's. This is the skeleton of the silver-armored rhinoceros. Judging from its appearance, it was very similar to the silver-armored rhinoceros described in the book and Gray himself. Gray was almost certain that this was the silver-armored rhinoceros he was looking for. The silver-armored rhinoceros was defeated. What kind of blood fiend is it? It was actually able to defeat the silver-armored rhino with its physical strength. Could it be a desolate-level blood fiend? Due to the fact that the silver rhinoceros had an extremely strong defense, even a special barbaric-level blood fiend could only retreat in the end when it encountered one. However, this unknown blood fiend had actually killed the silver rhinoceros. It was obvious how powerful it was. Gray could not help but suspect that this was a desolate-level blood fiend. With the death of the silver-armored rhino, Gray had no reason to stay any longer. He quickly left the basin and quickly left the area. A desolate-level blood fiend, even if it was a flesh-type desolate-level blood fiend, was still extremely dangerous. With Gray's current strength, it was impossible for him to be a match for this flesh-type desolate-level blood fiend. Therefore, the wisest choice now was to quietly leave the area to avoid being targeted by this flesh-type desolate-level blood fiend. He could not help but break out in a cold sweat when he recalled that he had created such a huge commotion to attract the silver-armored rhinoceros. Fortunately, the flesh-type blood fiend that he suspected to be a desolate-level blood fiend should have already left the basin. Otherwise, he would be in danger. Gray walked alone in the lush forest. He was now dozens of miles away from the basin. Originally, he had come to hunt the silver-armored rhinoceros. However, the silver-armored rhinoceros had already been killed by another blood fiend. Naturally, the hunt had come to an end. This made him a little unwilling. After exchanging information with the Cumberland family, he had obtained information about the silver-armored rhinoceros with great difficulty. However, all he saw was a skeleton. Boom! A thunderous sound was heard. The terrifying sound was like the beating of a heavenly drum, deafening to the ears. What's going on? Gray could not help but be shocked. He quickly climbed to the top of a huge tree and looked in the direction of the sound. Immediately, he saw that in the distant forest, large patches of trees were collapsing. It was as if an invisible hand had snapped these trees like weed. Boom! Boom! Loud noises came from that direction one after another. Occasionally, huge rocks could be seen flying up into the sky like meteorite. There are blood fiends fighting, and their levels are not low. Gray's expression turned solemn. Such a commotion could not have been caused by a battle between ordinary blood fiends. Let's go and take a look. Gray headed towards the place where the battle was taking place. Finally, he appeared on a small hill not far from the place of the battle. Not far away, an area that was supposed to be lush with vegetation had been destroyed beyond recognition. The giant trees were slanted all over the place, scattered here and there, sparsely scattered. The ground was filled with huge potholes one after another. Two blood fiends were fighting among them. One of the blood fiends was covered in white scales. Its limbs were slender and its head was slightly flat. On both sides of its mouth were black natural veins. Whoosh! A large amount of water gathered around it, then turned into thin water blades and shot out. Everything that came into contact with the water blades was split in half, whether it was a huge tree or a mountain rock. There was no exception. A huge scratch appeared on the ground. Water-loathing beast. Gray recognized this blood fiend. The water-loathing beast could turn water into its own weapon. It could turn the originally weak and powerless water into a blood fiend with a destructive power that could cut through gold and jade. This was a special blood fiend. The other blood fiend was 7 meters long. Its body was sturdy and round, and it had no hair. Its skin was purple, as if it was polished from a piece of purple crystal, reflecting a purple brilliance. This was a blood fiend that Gray had never seen in book. No other blood fiend had a description similar to this one. Whoosh! The water-loathing beast attacked with a huge water blade. It was like a huge magic weapon with a blade that was a few meters wide and more than 10 meters long. It cut through the air, smashing everything in its way, and landed on the body of the purple blood fiend. Bang! But to Gray's surprise, the sharp water blade only left a shallow scratch on the body of the purple blood fiend. It was as if the attack was not a sharp water blade, but a rusty blunt weapon. Its defense is not inferior to the silver rhinoceros. Gray's eyes lit up. The purple blood fiend's defense was not inferior to the silver rhinoceros. His heart, which was slightly regretful that the silver rhinoceros had been killed, suddenly became active. Judging from the battle between the purple blood fiend and the water-loathing beast, the purple blood fiend should be a barbarian-level blood fiend. Wouldn't the blood of a barbarian-level blood fiend be the best substitute for the blood of the silver rhinoceros? All he wanted was a blood fiend with a strong defense like the silver rhinoceros. As for whether it was the blood of the silver rhinoceros, it did not matter. Gray had made up his mind to kill this purple blood fiend and obtain its blood, but he did not act immediately. If he acted now, he would most likely have to face 2 barbarian-level blood fiends. If he waited until the outcome of the battle between the 2 blood fiends was decided, he would only have to face 1 blood fiend. The choice was obvious. Roar! After being hit by the water blade, the purple blood fiend was enraged. It roared and its huge and round body dashed forward, smashing through rocks and trees as it charged toward the water flame beast. Whoosh! The water-loathing beast retreated backward. Another huge water blade, leaving a trail of destruction in its path, attacked the purple blood fiend. At this moment, a scene that Gray did not expect occurred. Faced with the sharp water blade, the purple blood fiend actually stretched out its huge purple claw and clawed at it. Boom! The water blade dissipated. The purple blood fiend paused for a moment, then charged toward the water-loathing beast again. What a strong force! Gray was shocked. The water-loathing beast was a barbarian-level special blood fiend. The blood fiend ability it used was naturally very powerful. The fact that the purple blood fiend was able to shatter the water blade with brute force showed how strong its physical strength was. This was a barbarian-level blood fiend with a strong defense and extremely strong physical strength. Its physical strength was so strong that its destructive power was not inferior to that of a barbarian-level special blood fiend. Boom, boom, boom. The battle between the water-loathing beast and the purple blood fiend was still ongoing. The water-loathing beast used its sharp water blade, destroying everything in its path. It was like a bronze-level magic weapon that had been activated, slashing toward the purple blood fiend. The purple blood fiend, on the other hand, displayed its strong defense and terrifying strength. Its huge claw smashed the water blade, which was as sharp as a bronze-level magic weapon, into pieces. Occasionally, the purple blood fiend did not manage to block the attack, but with its extremely strong defense, it managed to withstand the attack with light injuries. Bang! A huge mountain rock, which weighed dozens of tons, was slammed into the water-loathing beast by the purple blood fiend's claw. The water-loathing beast slashed its water blade and cut the huge mountain rock in half. At this moment, a huge body suddenly charged toward it. Bang! Like a comet, the water-loathing beast's huge body flew backward. The place where it was hit was a bloody mess, and blood was oozing out of its mouth. The water-loathing beast was severely injured. The purple blood fiend continued to pursue the water-loathing beast, but the severely injured water-loathing beast went berserk. It continuously slashed out water blade after water blade, and the surrounding area was completely flattened. Bang bang! The purple blood fiend was blasted away several times by the concentrated water blade. However, it finally got close to the water-loathing beast and slammed its claw down on its head. Crack! The crisp sound of bones breaking was heard. The flat head of the water-loathing beast became even flatter. Large amounts of blood oozed out of its mouth. There was even a white liquid mixed in with the blood. It was the brain tissue of the water-loathing beast. The water-loathing beast collapsed with a bang. It was completely dead. Chapter 378. A flesh-type blood fiend whose combat power is comparable to a special blood fiend. Gray had never seen a flesh-type blood fiend defeating or even killing a special blood fiend of the same level. He had never seen such a thing in any book. What had just happened had overturned his understanding of the world. It turned out that there were special blood fiends among the flesh-type blood fiends. Moreover, their combat power was not ordinary. He had not expected that the flesh-type blood fiend would be able to kill a special blood fiend. He knew that he had underestimated the flesh-type blood fiends. What had happened today had made him realize that there were extremely powerful flesh-type blood fiends. Their strength was not inferior to special blood fiends of the same level. It was better to say that they were special blood fiends. It was just that they were flesh-type special blood fiends. The so-called special blood fiends usually referred to those with elemental abilities. No, I was influenced by common sense. In fact, I have already encountered flesh-type special blood fiends before. Thinking carefully, Gray realized that he had already encountered flesh-type special blood fiends before. These special blood fiends were corpse ape-type blood fiends. The characteristic of corpse ape-type blood fiends was that they could control the corpses of blood fiends through their corpse-controlling meatballs. This was also a flesh-type ability. In terms of destructive power, corpse ape-type blood fiends were even more powerful than special blood fiends. The silver rhinoceros couldn't have been killed by this purple blood fiend, could it? Gray could not help but suspect that this purple blood fiend was the culprit behind the silver horn rhinoceros's death. With its powerful ability to kill special blood fiends, it definitely had the ability to kill the silver horn rhinoceros. It's very possible. The more Gray thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. At first, Gray thought that the silver horn rhinoceros had been killed by a desolate-level blood fiend. This was because even a special blood fiend would find it difficult to kill a silver horn rhinoceros. However, since this purple blood fiend had the ability to kill special blood fiends, it naturally had the ability to kill a silver horn rhinoceros. Moreover, this place was only a few dozen miles away from where the silver horn rhinoceros had been killed. It was extremely close. Crack! After killing the water-loathe beast, the purple blood fiend began to feast. It revealed its sharp teeth that were tens of centimeters long. With a single bite, it tore off a large piece of flesh. With another bite, the bones were instantly crushed. The sharpness and toughness of its teeth were no less than that of a magic weapon. Whoosh! Gray didn't hesitate any longer. He quickly rushed toward the purple blood fiend. When he was only a few dozen meters away from the purple blood fiend, he resolutely used his ice wind blade and blood fiend ability. A long green river appeared, like a river of stars descending from the heavens, sweeping towards the purple blood beast. When Gray rushed out, the purple blood beast had already sensed his presence. It raised its head, revealing a pair of golden eyes that stared at Gray ferociously. In the face of the green river, The purple blood beast had no intention of retreating. It raised its millstone-like front claws and slapped forward. Crack! This was a terrifying attack. Under this attack, a small part of the Green River was destroyed, and a large number of wind blades were shattered. Moreover, its strong body had an extraordinary resistance against cold air. Although the cold air was not completely useless when it hit its body, the effect was obviously much weaker than when it hit other blood fiends. However, the Green River was a combination of Ice Wind Blade and Ice Wind Blade after all. It possessed the destructive power of a second-stage barbarian. Although a small part of the river was destroyed, more of the Green River slammed into the purple blood beast's body. The purple blood beast was sent flying. Scratches appeared on its body, and its entire body was frozen in ice. Crack! The purple blood beast's terrifying strength easily broke free from the ice on its body. It broke out of the ice. Even when faced with a second-stage barbarian-level barbarian's Ice Wind Blade ability, the injuries it suffered were extremely limited. Its strong defense was undeniable. Roar! In the face of Gray's sudden attack and obviously powerful combat power, the purple blood beast had no intention of escaping. It roared and pounced on Gray. Thump, thump, thump! Gray released the iron-armed barbarian ape, the tusked boar, and the brute ant. Their bodies turned into metal, and they charged toward the purple blood beast. The iron-armed barbarian ape was at the forefront. Its iron fists, which were as thick as water tanks, hammered toward the purple blood beast. However, the purple blood beast did not dodge and allowed the iron-armed barbarian ape's fists to land on its body. Boom! The iron-armed barbarian ape's huge body was sent flying. Although the hardness of its fists was not inferior to that of the purple blood beast, it was far weaker in terms of strength. The iron-armed barbarian ape was sent flying by the purple blood beast's attack. Squeak! The tusked boar neighed. An invisible shockwave spread out and hit the purple blood beast's body. However, the sound waves that collided with the purple blood beast were like waves crashing against a reef, easily dissipating. The purple blood beast continued to charge forward, unharmed. With a single charge, the fanged boar was sent flying like a small mountain. Out of the 3 barbarian-level blood beasts, only the brute ant was left standing in front of Gray. The brute ant broke through the barricade of the 2 barbarian-level blood beasts in front of it. The brute ant was 5 meters long and possessed rare strength among the barbarian-level blood beasts. After its body was turned into metal, its defense was comparable to that of the silver-armored rhinoceros. The purple blood beast was a special barbarian-level blood beast that possessed terrifying strength and defense. It could even kill a special barbarian-level blood beast like the water-loathe beast. The purple blood beast's gigantic body towered over the brute ant. Its gigantic claws slammed toward the brute ant. The brute ant revealed its sharp mouth and bit toward the purple blood beast. Boom! In the face of the brute force ant, the purple blood beast's power was finally unable to destroy it. After the collision, the brute force ant was not sent flying by the purple blood beast's claw. Even so, the brute force ant's body was still pushed back more than 10 meters. Apparently, the purple blood beast's strength was even greater than the brute ant's, but not by much. After repelling the brute ant, the purple blood beast was already in front of Gray. Its gigantic purple claws tore through the air, as if they could even shatter space itself, as it slammed down toward Gray. Gray's expression was calm. A green river appeared once again. Bang! Just like before, the purple blood beast was sent flying. Many wounds appeared on its body. As expected, a blood beast with this level of defense is very difficult to kill. Seeing such destructive power, Gray shook his head slightly. Although there were many wounds on the purple blood beast's body, they were not serious. It was obvious that a blood beast with this level of defense was very difficult to kill. However, this also strengthened his resolve to kill this purple blood fiend and obtain its blood. With the purple blood beast's defense and the enhancement of its defense after the metal transformation, he would definitely possess a terrifying defense. At that time, Even among the barbarian blood warriors, no one would be able to break through his defense and kill him. Even the desolate blood warriors would find it extremely difficult to kill him. In addition, he had attained the second level of the barbarian blood beast ability. At that time, he would almost have the ability to go head-to-head with the desolate blood warriors. Although the power of his blood beast ability was not a match for the desolate blood warriors, he could rely on his strong defense to contend with them. Roar! The purple blood beast that was sent flying fought with the 3 barbarian blood beasts that came back to surround it. After a while, the purple blood beast sent the 3 barbarian blood beasts flying again and charged toward Gray. Perhaps it was because Gray had used a combination of ice and wind blades to injure it before, but the purple blood beast had its eyes on Gray. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Gray did not use the combination of ice and wind blades again. Faced with the purple blood beast's extremely strong defense, the freezing effect of his ice was very limited. It was almost impossible to restrain the purple blood beast. He used his lightning metal ability. A large number of sharp metal blades with purple lightning floated around him. Under his command, tens of thousands of arrows were shot at the purple blood beast. Poof, poof, poof. Scorch marks appeared on the purple blood beast's body. Even with its strong defense, bloody holes appeared one after another under the attack of the purple lightning metal blades. Without exception, the purple blood beast was sent flying again. This time, it was in a worse state than the previous 2 times. It crashed into a mountain rock that weighed dozens of tons and smashed it into pieces. The combination of the lightning metal ability was a combination of 2 pure destructive abilities. Its power was stronger than the combination of ice and wind blades. Naturally, the damage it caused to the purple blood beast was also great. Whoosh! After using the lightning metal ability to send the purple blood beast flying, Gray did not maintain his distance. Instead, he rushed toward the purple blood beast. In his hand was a long red sword. This was the magic weapon that he had obtained from the Wallen family's barbarian blood warrior in the Tomb of the Kings. It was a pinnacle bronze-level magic weapon. Bang, bang, bang! The 3 blood fiends were once again sent flying by the purple blood beast. Fortunately, the defense of the 3 blood fiends was not weaker than that of the purple blood beast. Otherwise, they would have been destroyed by the purple blood beast's enormous strength. At this moment, Gray rushed toward the purple blood beast. His long red sword was wrapped in red flames as it slashed toward the purple blood beast. The purple blood beast slapped down with its huge purple claw and collided with the long red flaming sword. Bang! The purple blood beast slid backward. The pinnacle bronze-level magic weapon, in Gray's hand, was also at the second stage of the barbarian level. With the help of the magic weapon, Gray was now able to reach the second stage of the barbarian level, regardless of whether it was his blood fiend ability or his close combat ability. The only regret was that the weapon in his hand was a knife and not the sword that he was most comfortable with. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. After sending the purple blood beast flying with one strike, Gray used his lightning metal ability again. Crackle, crackle! A large number of lightning metal blades appeared. Under Gray's control, they gathered together and transformed into a huge purple snake that collided with the purple blood beast. The purple blood beast was sent flying. Bloody holes appeared on its body one after another. Roar! However, the purple blood beast's strong defense withstood the attack. The lightning metal was still unable to cause any fatal injuries to it. It got up and pounced toward Gray again. Chapter 379. Humph! Gray was not afraid of the purple blood fiend. With the bronze peak demonic weapon in hand, his close combat power had also reached the second level of the barbarian level. Instead of retreating, he advanced. The crimson saber in his hand suddenly emitted a crimson light that extended for a few meters. It turned into a crimson ray of light and attacked. Bang! The saber landed on the purple blood fiend's shoulder, and it flew backward at a speed faster than when it had charged. There was a long burn mark on its shoulder, and the flesh around it had been carbonized. With Gray's combat power at the second level of the barbarian level, he only needed to attack a few times to kill a special blood fiend, just like the Crimson Tiger. If the purple blood fiend did not have such a strong body, it would have been killed by Gray many times. Woo! The purple blood fiend got up again and knocked away 3 other barbarian-level blood fiends. It then charged toward Gray. Gray took the initiative to meet it and engaged it in battle. Boom, boom, boom. Gray and the purple blood fiend were engaged in a fierce battle. With the bronze demonic weapon in his hand, Gray combined his close combat power with his lightning and metal abilities. Together with the 3 barbarian-level blood fiends, he battled the purple blood fiend. In terms of combat power, he was much stronger than the purple blood fiend. However, the purple blood fiend's defense was able to withstand Gray's powerful attacks time and time again. Fortunately, the purple blood fiend was finally unable to withstand such powerful attacks. Blood flowed from its body like a fountain, and its entire body was covered in wounds. Almost no part of its body was unscathed. Ha! Gray bellowed. His lightning and metal abilities transformed into a metal sword that was more than 10 meters long. Purple lightning circled around the metal sword like giant purple lightning snake. Poof! The metallic sword, which was wrapped in lightning, pierced through a wound on the purple blood beast's body so severe that one could see its bones. It then exploded with a loud boom, turning into countless metallic blades inside the purple blood beast's body. Woo! The purple blood fiend screamed miserably as its body rolled around crazily. The 3 barbarian-level blood fiends that were attacking it were all sent flying. It rolled around and almost razed the surrounding area to the ground before it finally stopped struggling and died. Finally dead. Gray heaved a sigh of relief and hurried forward to collect the blood. The difficulty of dealing with this purple blood fiend was no less than that of the level 2 barbaric blood warrior Gray had fought in the last chamber of the Tomb of the Kings. Although its combat prowess was not up to par, its powerful defense made up for its lack of combat prowess, making it no less difficult to deal with than its opponent. We'll soon find out how strong the purple blood fiend's defense is after metallization. After collecting the blood, Gray looked at the wounded corpse of the purple blood fiend, his eyes filled with anticipation. The purple blood fiend possessed great strength and defense, making it the perfect target to control corpses. Gray naturally wouldn't miss this opportunity. Moreover, from the purple blood beast's body, he was able to find out how strong the purple blood beast's defense would be after it was metallized. Was it as he expected? Was it so strong that even a berserker at the second level of the berserker level would find it difficult to break through its defense? He used his ability to control corpses to control the purple blood fiend. Then, he used his ability to heal the purple blood fiend's injuries. Finally, an unscathed purple blood fiend appeared in front of Gray. Metallize! After using metallize, the purple blood fiend's body, which was originally like a purple crystal, began to be mixed with a bronze color. Finally, it turned into a purplish-green color. Whoosh! Gray took a deep breath. The crimson saber in his hand was wrapped in crimson flames and emitted a scorching heat. It expanded to a length of several meters and slashed at the blood fiend that had turned into a purplish-green color. Clang! The sound of metal clashing rang out. The purple blood fiend was sent flying like a cannonball. It crashed all the way until it finally crashed into a small mountain. Gray came to the side of the small mountain and commanded the purple blood fiend to pull itself out. He looked at the spot where the purple blood fiend had been hit by the red longsword. No wounds. In the next moment, Gray's face showed that he had expected it. Under the attack of the red longsword, which was at the second level of the berserker level, there was not a single wound on the purple blood fiend's body. The purple blood fiend had withstood the attack of the second level of the berserker level without any injuries. Let's try using the mixed ability of ice and wind blades and the mixed ability of lightning and metal. A long green river descended from the sky and a terrifying chill filled the air. Wind blades floated up and down in the river, drowning the purple blood fiend. The purple metal blades, which were flashing with lightning, rained down on the purple blood fiend's body. In the end, there was no change. After being hit by the mixed ability of ice and wind blades and the mixed ability of lightning and metal, there was still not a single wound on the purple blood fiend's body. It's difficult to damage a berserker level. Seeing this result, Gray could basically confirm that the purple blood fiend's defense was so strong that it was difficult for a berserker level to damage it. It would be difficult for an average desolate blood warrior to kill it as well. Although there was no way to test it, Gray estimated that with such a strong defense, an average desolate blood warrior would not be able to inflict any serious injuries on it. Killing it would not be an easy task. "Brother, you're back." A week later, Gray returned to Fergus Castle. He had been away for more than a month, and he had gone because of the appearance of the Tomb of the Kings. The Fergus family was quite worried. Fortunately, after Gray left the Tomb of the Kings, he had sent a letter back to report that he was safe, so the Fergus family was not too worried. "Father, you're already a berserker warrior?" More than a month had passed. With the unlimited supply of blood from the berserker-level blood fiends, the strength of the Fergus family had greatly increased. Bernal was getting closer and closer to becoming a ferocious blood warrior. Caroline's strength continued to increase on the basis of an upper-level blood warrior. Sarah had advanced to an upper-level blood warrior. Even Elise, who had a lower aptitude, had advanced to a middle-level blood warrior. Earl Fergus's strength had increased the most. He had actually broken through the murderous level and advanced to the berserker level, becoming a berserker warrior on par with his current status. "It's all thanks to the blood of the berserker-level blood fiends that you brought back." Earl Fergus was in a very good mood after his strength had advanced to the berserker level. At his age, it would have been very difficult for him to advance. However, the blood of the berserker-level blood fiends that Gray had brought back gave him the opportunity to advance to a level that he had once thought was hopeless in this lifetime. After a joyous meal with the Fergus family, Gray learned more about the changes in the Fergus family over the past month. "Brother Elise is already engaged? Which family is she from?" With the Fergus family's current strength and prestige in Sydney, there were naturally many families who were interested in forming a marriage alliance with the Fergus family. Apart from Bernal, Gray and his 3 siblings had already been targeted. Among them, Elise was the oldest, so it was natural that Elise's engagement was facilitated. "She's from Viscount Carlisle's family." Madame de Milan grinned from ear to ear. The marriage partner was a noblewoman from a viscount's family. Madame de Milan was very satisfied and thought that this was an extremely compatible marriage. "Brother Elise, congratulations." "Thank you." Although he didn't have a good impression of Elise, even now, Gray still congratulated her since they lived in the same castle. Elise thanked him with a hint of fear. It was obvious that she was afraid of Gray, who was now at the peak of his power. Gray had an unpleasant experience with her before. In fact, this fear was unnecessary. Although he didn't have a good impression of her, as long as she didn't provoke him in the future, Gray wouldn't do anything to her. "Now that Elise is engaged, it's time for you and Caroline." Bernal looked at Gray with a smile and joke. "How about it, do you have any intentions? There are many noble ladies who have their eyes on you now. How about Miss Hazel from Earlford's family? If she's interested in Miss Polly, I think it's also possible for you to. I don't want to think about it for now." Gray interrupted the other party with a smile. "You'd better help Sister Caroline look for someone first. Caroline, what do you think of young Master Twain? Although his looks are a little ordinary, his temperament is superior, and his talent for cultivation is also very strong." "He's not my type." Bernal turned to Caroline, but Caroline raised her head very elegantly and cut off Bernal's words with one sentence. After making a trip to the Red Wing and confirming that everything in the Red Wing was normal, he asked the Red Wing to look for a Gale Wolf for Earl Fergus to implant his bloodline. After that, Gray stayed in the castle with peace of mind. While he was cultivating, he would also give pointers to Sarah and the others from time to time. Unknowingly, more than half a month had passed. Gray solemnly took out a bottle of potion from the purple ring. This was a bottle of potion contained in a transparent crystal bottle. The liquid in the potion was golden red, like a burning flame. It was the blaze potion that he won from the Flame Kingdom's Niklos Blaze. Seeing this bottle of blaze potion, Gray could not help but think of the 2 bottles of blaze potion that Sophia had taken away. He could not help but gnash his teeth in anger. He fought hard on the stage and only got 1 bottle, but the other party got 2 just by moving his mouth off the stage. He was a complete profiteer. Gulp, unscrewing the cork, Gray took a sip. The golden red liquid had a slight sweetness, like honey brewed from flowers. It was extremely mellow and was not difficult to swallow. He swallowed it in 1 gulp. Whoosh! In the next moment, he felt as if he had swallowed a ball of red flames. The raging flames quickly spread throughout his body, burning every inch of it. Bones, organs, muscles, there were flames burning everywhere, but there was an exuberant vitality in his body. He seemed to be reborn from the flames. Chapter 380. Gray took advantage of the potion's effect and began to cultivate. Suddenly, a giant lizard covered in sapphire scales appeared. It was 9 meters long, and there was a long horn on its huge head. It looked like a sharp knife that pierced the sky. A terrifying aura of destruction filled the air. It was majestic and overbearing, as if it came from the abyss of destruction. Gray entered the state of cultivation and immersed himself in it. Soon, he completed the first round of cultivation and entered the second round. He reached his usual cultivation progress. However, under the effect of the potion, his cultivation progress did not stop. The first cultivation in the second round reached 30%, 40%, half. After a long while, he finally exited from his cultivation. The first training method has been completed. After more than a month of training and a bottle of blazing flame potion, Gray's level had risen from the initial stage of the Berserker realm to the second stage. He had completed the first training method. More than 70% of the credit was due to the blaze potion. Although his own strength increased quickly due to his transformation ability, he had just reached the barbarian level not long ago. There was a limit to how much he could improve. Gray was not in a hurry to leave the cultivation room. He took out a crystal bottle from the purple ring. Inside the crystal bottle there was a purple liquid. The color was bewitching, like a purple gemstone. It was the blood of an unknown purple blood beast. Gulp, Gray swallowed it in 1 gulp again. Oh no! As soon as he swallowed it, Gray could not help but let out a strange cry. It was similar to the previous but more intense heat. He felt that every part of his body was burning. It was as if he had turned into a man of fire and was continuously emitting heat. No, it was not as if, it was the truth. He could clearly feel that his body temperature was abnormal. It had far exceeded the normal body temperature. If it was in his previous life, he would have died in a matter of minutes. However, there were too many things in this world that were beyond the common sense of his previous life. It could not be measured by the common sense of his previous life. Even under such high temperature, he did not die. He was still alive and did not even faint. However, this was a kind of torment. He could clearly feel the burning pain all over his body, but he was unable to stop it. He could only continue to endure this pain. Wave after wave of pain hit his brain like a tidal wave, causing his face to turn pale and cold sweat to flow. In just a short while, his clothes were completely drenched. My body won't be able to withstand this transformation. Every time he swallowed blood, his body would more or less experience some pain, but it would never be this intense. The only reason for this was that his body was not strong enough to withstand this transformation. Every transformation would add a new bloodline to the body. Although Gray would not experience bloodline rejection like other people, which would cause his body to be crippled and his strength to regress, he still needed a stronger body to withstand this new bloodline. It had only been a little over a month since the last time he had taken the blood. However, Gray had taken the flame potion into consideration. He had already completed the first part of the second round of training, and his realm had increased by a large margin. Only then did he have the courage to take the blood. But now, it seemed that this level of improvement was far from enough. His body was not strong enough to withstand the new bloodline. The excruciating pain was like a knife scraping across his body. Again and again, he felt like he was being cut by a knife. Enduring the pain of being stabbed again and again, Gray's body was covered in sweat for a long time. Only when he was numb from the pain did the pain finally disappear. Thud! Gray fell to the ground, panting heavily. His whole body was numb, and he could not exert any strength. After a long time, he recovered some strength and stood up. He smiled bitterly. From now on, every time I take the blood, I will have to do at least 2 training styles in between. Only then will this situation not happen again. In the Berserk stage, Gray could take the blood almost every time he completed a training style. When he reached the Berserk stage, he was originally happy. From the Berserk stage to the Desolate stage, he needed to complete 2 rounds of 8 training styles. If he could take the blood every time he completed a training style, he could take the blood 8 times in the Berserk stage, but now it seemed that it was not possible. After reaching the Berserk stage, the requirements for the bloodline implantation became higher. He needed to complete at least 2 training styles before his body could withstand the new bloodline implantation. I don't know if the bloodline implantation was successful. I hope it won't cause permanent damage to my body this time. Feeling weak all over, Gray was worried. If he did not have the ability to control corpses, he would not be able to defeat any berserker. Of course, they would not be able to kill him either. After all, even if the purple bloodline implantation failed, the terrifying defense of the metallized form would be enough to protect him from the attacks of the berserkers. What worried him even more was whether the purple blood fiend's bloodline had been successfully implanted into his body. Would the overload implantation of the bloodline cause permanent damage to his body? The failure of the implantation was a small matter. If it caused permanent damage to his body, it would be too late for regret. Gray rested for a week. During this week, he did not even have the strength to practice the blood technique. It could be said that he had spent an extremely weak week. After that, his body slowly recovered. Another week passed before his body was able to return to normal. I don't feel anything strange. Gray did not feel any abnormalities in his body when he tried to practice. He finally breathed a sigh of relief. Fortunately, his body did not experience the worst situation. If there was any permanent damage, it would be a disaster for Gray. Although there were some magic potions that could treat permanent damage, those things were almost impossible to obtain. Even among potion masters, only a few people could refine them. For example, in order to heal Edgar Wallen's broken hand, the Wallen family had paid a hefty price to request the help of a master pharmacist from the royal family. Even for a marquis family like the Wallen family, it was an extremely huge price to pay. One could imagine how difficult it was to obtain such medicines. I don't know if the reverse nurturing ability can heal permanent damage. I hope there won't be a day when I try it. Although the reverse nurturing ability was very powerful, it was not to the extent that it could heal all injuries. Gray did not dare to place all his hopes on it. For example, this time, his body had been weak for 2 weeks. During this time, although Gray had used the reverse nurturing ability, it had no effect at all. Clearly, the reverse nurturing ability could not heal all injuries. Next, let's see if the Purple Blood Fiend's Blood Beast ability can be successfully implanted. After finding a forest near the castle, Gray released the Purple Blood Fiend. His body turned into metal, and the surface of his skin emitted a bronze metallic luster. Bang! The Purple Blood Fiend rushed over, its huge purple claws not holding back at all. It clawed at Gray's body. Gray was sent flying like a meteor. One tree after another was smashed by him. Wood shavings flew everywhere, and the trees fell in a row. He crashed into a huge mountain rock 100 meters away, shattering it and stopping. Clang! Gray removed the gravel from his body and looked at his body. His clothes had been hit by the purple blood fiend's claw. There was a huge hole in his chest, and his skin was clearly exposed. The exposed skin was bronze in color due to the metallization of his body. However, there was not a single wound on his body, not even where the purple blood fiend's claws had clawed him. My defense has indeed increased. If it was in the past, an attack of this level would have been enough to injure me. The purple blood fiend was a special type of blood fiend with a physical body. Its attack power could reach the special level of the barbarian level. An attack of this level should have left some injuries, even if his body was metallized. However, there were no injuries. This was enough to show that his defense was now much stronger than before. Crackle! 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 Gray did not stop there. He used the lightning metal ability. Suddenly, sharp metal blades with purple lightning appeared around him. Whoosh! 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 All the metal blades with purple lightning struck down at the same time, but their target was Gray. Clang! 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 After a series of attacks, Gray's clothes were almost completely shredded. However, there was still not a single wound on Gray's body. There were not even any charred marks. It is indeed the same as the purple blood fiend. My defense has reached a level where even a second-level barbarian level would not be able to damage me. Gray nodded in satisfaction. This would be an important trump card when he faced the Nahum family. Although his combat power was not at the level of a desolate blood warrior, his strong defense was enough to withstand the attacks of a desolate blood warrior. Coupled with the teleportation ability of the purple ring, it would not be too difficult for him to escape from a desolate blood warrior. In fact, by relying on their powerful defense, it was not impossible for them to fight a desolate blood warrior and force them to retreat. Although the silver rhinoceros combat power was not comparable to a special barbarian level blood fiend, every time it fought a special barbarian level blood fiend, the latter would retreat. Gray felt that he could do the same. Unknowingly, a few months had passed. In these few months, Gray only went out once. That was when the Red Wing found traces of the Gale Wolf. The rest of the time, he stayed in the castle. In the outside world, at the border between the Purple Moon Kingdom and the Flame Kingdom, there would be news of border conflicts from time to time. The most serious one was when the Purple Moon Kingdom and the Flame Kingdom had a conflict of more than 1,000 people. More than half of each side were injured or killed. Almost everyone thought that a war would break out, but it was suppressed by both sides. The turmoil at the border caused all the nobles of the Purple Moon Kingdom to pay close attention to the border. One day, a letter bird flew into Fergus Castle. After reading the letter, Earl Fergus's expression changed drastically. He immediately called everyone to his study and said with an extremely serious expression, "A war has broken out." Chapter 381. War has broken out. Earl Fergus's expression was solemn. A day ago, the Flame Kingdom invaded the Purple Moon Kingdom on a large scale. Now, 1/3 of Duke Niam's territory bordering the Flame Kingdom has been occupied by the Flame Kingdom. War has broken out in the end. Gray, Bernal, and the others had heavy hearts. Although they had already guessed that war would break out, they still could not help but feel heavy when they knew that war had really broken out. War was a meat grinder of life, a battlefield paved with blood and bones. Once it broke out, there would be piles of bones and rivers of blood. In history, every war that broke out was extremely tragic. Ordinary soldiers would die in it, and so would nobles. The previous head of the Fergus family had died in it. Even prodigies with limitless potential and desolate blood warriors who dominated a region could die in it. It was an unfathomable abyss. No one could guarantee that they could survive such a meat grinder. I'm afraid the conscription will come soon. Bernal frowned. Every time a war broke out, the Purple Moon Kingdom would send out conscriptions to the nobles of the kingdom. Although the Fergus family was not a noble of the kingdom, they were nobles of the Sidney family. When the Sidney family was conscripted, the Fergus family would naturally be conscripted as well. Based on the current situation of the Sidney family, the casualties in the Sidney territory will probably not be small this time. Grey looked worried. War was naturally a battle of strength. Whoever was stronger would naturally have a higher chance of survival in the war, and whoever was weaker would naturally have a lower chance of survival in the war. Because of the King of Assassins, the Sidney family was almost wiped out. Almost all of their experts were killed, and even the ultimate trump card, the Copperback Dragon, was killed. The Sidney family had lost its powerful strength, so the chances of surviving on the battlefield would naturally be greatly reduced for these nobles who belonged to the Sidney family. Although the Fergus family was a new force to be reckoned with, they were still incomparable to the former Sidney family. Just the Copperback Dragon alone was far more powerful than the current Fergus family. We also need to be careful of the Nahum family. Earl Fergus frowned. Because of the silver medal ball, Grey and the Nahum family had fallen out. Although the Nahum family hadn't found out yet because of Sophia, it wouldn't be long before the Nahum family found out. When the war broke out, Grey had to go. Furthermore, that was the Nahum family's territory. The Nahum family's people were everywhere. Once he entered, he would definitely be discovered by the Nahum family. We've been called to participate in the war. The Nahum family shouldn't dare to act against us openly, right? Bernal said. It's hard to say. Even if they don't dare to act openly in the face of a powerful enemy, it's still possible for them to act in secret. Earl Fergus said with a grave expression. Acting in secret on the battlefield wasn't something that hadn't happened before. The Wallen family had once acted in secret against the Sidney family on the battlefield, causing the Sidney family and the nobles who belonged to the Sidney family to suffer disastrous losses. There's no need to worry too much. We're not completely powerless to fight back. The forbidden artifact in my hands is enough to intimidate the Graham family. Grey raised his eyebrows. He had already told Earl Fergus and the others about the forbidden artifact that he was now a barbaric blood warrior. Although the Nahum family was powerful, he wasn't someone who could be easily bullied. His defense was so strong that even a second-level barbaric blood warrior couldn't damage it. This gave him the confidence to fight against a desolate blood warrior. Moreover, he had the forbidden artifact in his hands. 2 arrows. If he was ruthless, it was enough to kill 2 desolate blood warriors. When the time came, it would be enough to deter the Nahum family from acting rashly. At the same time that the Fergus family received the news of the war, many other families also received the same news. The outbreak of the war caused the entire Purple Moon Kingdom to be in an uproar. Urgent discussions like the one that Grey and the others were having were happening all over the Purple Moon Kingdom. Among them, there were those who were worried and those who were happy. Every family had different attitudes towards the war because of their family's situation. The Wallen family. Damn it, the war actually broke out at this juncture. Marquis Brent Wallen, who had received the news, smashed his teacup to pieces. In the battle with Grey, the Wallen family had suffered a great loss. The family's experts who went to besiege Grey were all seriously injured. What made them panic the most was that the rune puppet, which was the family's foundation, had been destroyed by the forbidden artifact in Grey's hands during the battle. The Wallen family had searched the entire Purple Moon Kingdom for rune masters. They had offered a huge reward for the restoration of the rune puppet, but until now, the restoration was still far away. And at this critical juncture, the war had actually broken out. One could imagine that without the rune puppet, the Warren family, whose fighting strength had been greatly reduced, would definitely suffer a great loss on the battlefield. Thinking of this, his hatred for Grey, who had caused all this, could not help but surge. However, after a long time, it turned into a sigh. The Wallen family, who had lost their foundation, could not compete with the current opponent. If they met on the battlefield, the Wallen family could only choose to retreat. The Kenneth family. It's finally here. I missed the Flame Kingdom's visit last time, but this time, I won't miss it. A tall young man with a head of blue hair stood up and looked in the direction of Duke Niam's territory, his eyes full of fighting spirit. He was Gavin Kenneth, the strongest of the younger generation of the Kenneth family, and also the strongest of the younger generation of the 3rd Duke and 7th Marquis family. He had stepped into the realm of the barbaric blood warriors many years ago, and had already walked very far in this realm. As the strongest of the younger generation of the 3rd Duke and 7th Marquis family, he had long wanted to meet the younger generation of the Flame Kingdom. If not for the fact that he had been at a critical juncture in his training, he would not have missed that banquet. The Leo family of the kingdom's noble count. This is an opportunity. On the main seat, the head of the Leo family, a dark-skinned man, swept his gaze across the upper echelons of the family. If we can achieve outstanding military service in this war, our Leo family will definitely become the 8th Marquis family. Everyone, for the glory of the family, work hard. The eyes of the upper echelons of the Leo family were burning with the flames of war. In order to achieve outstanding military service in this war, they would not hesitate to risk their lives. The Orca Marquis family. Marquis Orca, with a round face and 2 tufts of beard, swept his gaze across the upper echelons of the Orca family. In this war, the Orca family will prioritize preserving their strength. In the residence of Zero and his siblings in the Imperial City. The war has broken out. The 3 of them frowned. Now, only the 3 of them were left in the Sidney family, and their strength was even weaker than some of the Count families. If there was any force that was most afraid of war, it would definitely be the Sidney family. However, war was not something that could be changed by their will. After more than 10 years, when the Sidney family's strength was at its weakest, war broke out again. What should we do? Polly's face was full of worry. We can only take one step at a time. You guys stay in the Imperial City, I'll return to the territory. Zeloyan sighed. No, we're also members of the Sidney family, we have to go back too. Polly and Darren both shook their heads with determined eyes. On the day the news of the war broke out, the Fergus family became lively. First, Earl Ford came with Twain and Hazel to visit. Then, the Evelyn's family, which was related to the Fergus family by marriage, came. And this was not the end. After them, many other families came to visit. Madame de Milan's family was from the Harry family. The Bessemer family, which had a tradition of women inheriting titles. The Carlisle family, which was engaged to the Fergus family. The Moore family, which was newly promoted to a viscount. One by one, the noble families of the Sidney territory came to visit. Even the Richens family, which had some disagreements with the Fergus family, was personally led by the head of the family and came to visit with expensive gifts. It was not hard to guess the intentions of these families. War had broken out, but the Sidney family only existed in name at the moment. It was a problem for them to even protect themselves. On the battlefield, there was no protection for them at all. On the other hand, the Fergus family had suddenly risen to power. There were several berserkers in the family. This gave them hope that the Fergus family could take care of them on the battlefield. Earl Fergus received the heads of the noble families, while Grey and Bernal received the younger generation of the noble families. Young Master Grey, we've gone too far in the past. We apologize to you here. Please forgive us. Clifford and Timothy of the Richens family were very humble. In front of the younger generation, they took the initiative to apologize to Grey. Let bygones be bygones, Grey said calmly. With his current strength, if he really held a grudge against the Richens family would not have survived until now. He was too lazy to care about some of the conflicts that were not too serious. Of course, he would not let go of the kind of hatred that would not end until one of them was dead. For example, the Rock family had tipped off the Shadow Serpent, causing the Shadow Serpent to assassinate the Fergus family. They had almost caused the Fergus family to be wiped out. Such a grudge would naturally not end until one of them was dead. That was why he had destroyed the Rock family. I didn't expect him to grow so much in just a few years. The eldest daughter of the Bessemer family, Jolly Bessemer, looked at Gray with amazement in her beautiful eyes. A few years ago, in Sydney Castle, although he had shown outstanding talent, his strength was only on par with hers. Who would have thought that in just a few years, he had grown to the point where she had to look up to him? Who would have thought that at that time? Chapter 382. A few days later, Bernal and his siblings returned to Sydney and eventually came to Fergus Castle. They brought with them orders from the royal family. Unsurprisingly, the Sydney family was also summoned and asked to assemble a team to support the Fergus Castle. Soon, the heads of the noble families of Sydney were summoned to attend a meeting. Gray was the only one of the younger generation who was not a head of a noble family but still attended the meeting. None of the families objected to Gray's participation in the meeting. In fact, they were all very supportive of him. Although Gray was not the head of the Fergus family, he was the source of the Fergus family's strength. He held the strongest fighting force of the Fergus family. They were eager to build a good relationship with Gray so that they could be taken care of by Gray on the battlefield. Earl Fergus, Gray, this time will have to rely on the Fergus family. Zero looked at Earl Fergus and Gray. The main force of Sydney in this battle would definitely be the Fergus family. The strongest members of the other families, including himself, were only berserk warriors. They could not be the main force on the battlefield. How many people could come back alive from Sydney would depend on the strength of the Fergus family. Rest assured, Marquis. The Fergus family will do our best. Earl Fergus and Gray said seriously. They could only say that they would do their best, but they could not give any guarantees. On the battlefield, even wild blood warriors could die. With the current strength of the Fergus family, there was no guarantee at all. 3 days later, the noble families of Sydney gathered a team of 30,000 people and set off. However, the morale of the team was extremely low. Even the ordinary soldiers knew more or less about the current situation in Sydney. Under such circumstances, the morale of the troops could not be high. In order to boost the morale of the team, Gray and Earl Fergus rode on barbaric-level blood fiends. Some other families with blood fiends also rode on their blood fiend. Sure enough, when they saw the 2 7-meter-tall barbaric-level blood fiends and the other blood fiends with powerful auras, the morale of the team gradually rose. The huge size of the blood fiends did not bring them fear, but confidence. After all, these blood fiends were on their side. On the battlefield, they would become comrades who would fight alongside them. With such powerful comrades, their morale would naturally soar. Dong, dong, dong. The huge tusked boar was covered in black fur. It was as huge as a small mountain, and with every step it took, the ground would sink. It attracted the respectful gazes of the surrounding people. "You shouldn't have come back," Gray said with a frown as he sat on the tusked boar. Beside Gray, a beautiful blonde woman in a purple battle suit was also sitting on the tusked boar. When she heard Gray's words, her expression was firm. "I'm Polly Sydney, a member of the Sydney family. Naturally, I have the obligation to fight for the Sydney family. You should understand the danger of this battle." Gray looked at her and said sternly, "I know." Polly nodded and then shook her head. "It's because of this that I have to participate. The Sydney family can be killed, but we can't be afraid of battle." Her long blonde hair was neatly tied into a ponytail, revealing a beautiful but determined face. The great change in her family had caused her to grow rapidly from a carefree noble girl. This kind of growth made people feel heartache and pity her. Gray sighed in his heart. He could only think of taking care of her as much as possible on the battlefield. On the battlefield, Even Gray himself did not dare to guarantee that he would survive. This was the best he could do. The Nahum family has 2 barbaric blood warriors and 1 desolate blood warrior severely injured. Within the Neum territory, Thunder Buddha City, which is ranked in the top 3 in terms of population, has been destroyed. The entire city has been plundered by the Flame Kingdom. Half of Duke Neum's territory has already been occupied. The Flame Kingdom has already sent troops to attack the other noble territories. On the way to support, there was constant news from the front lines. Facing the powerful Flame Kingdom, the Nahum family, who bore the brunt, had suffered heavy losses and were retreating in defeat. The Flame Kingdom's allied army had even spread to the territories outside of Duke Neum's territory. I don't know if it's good news or bad news. Gray was naturally happy to see the Neum family's strength suffer. After all, with his relationship with the Nahum family, there would definitely be a battle in the future. The Nahum family's strength would be greatly reduced, and the threat they posed to him would naturally decrease. However, the Flame Kingdom's aggressive momentum also gave him a great sense of crisis. The Nahum family's strength was definitely not weak. To be able to make the Nahum family retreat in defeat without any resistance, one could imagine the strength of the Flame Kingdom's allied army this time. So many refugees. After several days of hurrying, when they were about to enter Duke Neum's territory, Gray and the others were shocked by what they saw. In front of them, there was a long line of refugees that stretched as far as the eye could see. Among the refugees, there were mothers who carried crying babies on their back. There were fathers who used handcarts to pull their young children. There were white-haired old men who slowly walked forward with crutches in their hands. There were people who seemed to have lost their family members, their faces full of grief. A teenage brother holding a young sister, a brother and sister who depended on each other for survival. The refugees were all panic-stricken, their eyes blank. That was the fear of the unknown, that was the loss of their future. Occasionally, there would be people who would suddenly collapse while walking, never to get up again, causing a wave of sorrowful cries. Who was the one who suffered the most in war? Not the nobles, but the commoners. They lost their homes, were slaughtered, bullied, and starved to death due to the lack of food. Although nobles also died on the battlefield, compared to the tragic experiences of the millions of commoners, it seemed so insignificant. Brushing past such a group of refugees, Gray and the others were all in a heavy mood. Apart from distributing some food to these refugees, there was nothing else they could do. They were now heading to the battlefield, so they couldn't bring such a group of commoners, nor could they give these people any comfort or guarantee, because they didn't know what the outcome of this battle with the Flame Kingdom would be. After entering Duke Neum's territory and traveling for a day, Gray's group of 30,000 people finally arrived at a huge city with a population of millions. Neum City, one of the 3 major cities of Duke Neum's territory, was also the only one of the 3 major cities of Duke Neum's territory that hadn't fallen. Here, Duke Neum's family had been rooted in Neum's territory for hundreds of years. It was the headquarters of Duke Neum's family, a place Gray was absolutely unwilling to step into. However, this time, they had no choice but to come, because of the orders of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family. All the nobles coming to support had to gather in this city. Within the city, a residential area had already been cleared for the various nobles coming to support. Gray and the others chose an area and sat down. In this area, Gray and the others saw people from various families. Basically, all the large and small families of the kingdom had already arrived. Gray and the others were the last group of people to arrive. After all, Zero and the other 2 had hurried back to their territory from the royal capital, and the process had taken a lot of time. It's the Smalley family. Traitor. It's that traitor family. They also saw the Smalley family that had already left Sydney's territory and joined the Orca family. Duke Smalley, you traitor! Looking at the former, Count Smalley, Count Ford berated angrily. Count Ford, it's been a long time. Duke Smalley was a man with long brown hair. Although he was over 50 years old, one could still vaguely see that he had been handsome when he was young. In the face of Count Ford's berating, he smiled and greeted him warmly as though he was a close friend whom he had not seen for many years. The Sidney family has treated you well. Has your conscience been eaten by a dog? You actually left the Sidney family immediately after the Sidney family met with misfortune and joined the Orca family. Count Ford snorted and looked at him coldly. I made that decision because I had no other choice. Duke Smalley shrugged with a look of innocence. If I were alone, I would naturally be willing to advance and retreat together with the Sidney family. Unfortunately, I'm not alone. I have a family behind me that relies on me, and I have to consider my family. What a good no other choice. Beside him, Zero walked out and sneered. Young Master Zero, I know you're angry, but I also struggled when I made that decision. Duke Smalley had a sincere look on his face as he spoke. Then it must have been hard on you. Zero snorted. I'm relieved that you can understand. Duke Smalley maintained a sincere look, but this sincere look was too fake no matter how one looked at it. It made one want to punch it. Bang. Someone really did so. With a punch, Duke Smalley's face immediately bloomed as he flew backward with blood flowing from his nose. The one who attacked was Gray. He had seen shameless people before, but he had never seen someone so shameless. Duke Smalley twisted his betrayal into a no other choice and still looked so calm. Gray Fergus, how dare you attack me? Duke Smalley reached out to touch his face and realized that his hand was covered in blood. He glared at Gray furiously. Why wouldn't I dare? Gray sneered and walked toward Duke Smalley. The Orca family won't let you off. Duke Smalley knew some rumors about Gray and knew that he wasn't a match for Gray. He kept retreating and distanced himself from Gray. Who dares to attack a member of the Orca family? At this moment, a berating voice rang out. A group of people walked over. The person in the lead was a man with a slightly plump face and a mustache. It was Marquis Orca. Seeing Duke Smalley's face covered in blood, he was instantly enraged and glared at Gray. How dare you attack a member of the Orca family? Are you looking down on the Orca family? Chapter 383. Look, someone is clashing with the Orca family. It's the Sidney family. The Sidney family? The Marquis family with only 3 members left? With the Sidney family's current strength, clashing with the Orca family isn't a good idea. If it was a year ago, the Sidney family wouldn't have been afraid of the Orca family. In fact, the Orca family would have taken the initiative to avoid them. However, things were different now. After the Sidney family was attacked by the King of Assassins, only 3 members of the family were left. The Sidney family's former glory had long faded. Not to mention the Marquis family, the Sidney family wouldn't even be able to contend with the Earl family with their current strength. Offending the Orca family under such circumstances was obviously a foolish choice. The discussions around them made Zaloyan, Polly, and Darren clench their fists so tightly that their knuckles turned white. Although the discussions were harsh, they were speaking the truth. The current Sidney family wasn't even comparable to the Earl family, let alone the Marquis family. As an Earl family that was infected by the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family, even the weakest one would definitely have several berserkers in the family. It wasn't something that the current Sidney family could contend with. It was also because of this reason that when they saw Duke Smalley, the traitor of the Sidney family, although the 3 siblings were furious, they ultimately held themselves back and didn't make a move. Orca family. Gray sneered and looked coldly at Marquis Orca, who had spoken. He didn't have a good impression of the Orca family. When the Sidney family was strong, the Orca family didn't even dare to fart. However, when the Sidney family was in trouble and their strength was greatly reduced, they immediately jumped out. They could be said to be extremely despicable. You actually dared to hurt the Orca family. If I don't make you give an explanation today, I'm afraid the other families will think that the Orca family is easy to bully. Marquis Oka's face was round, but at this moment, he was full of vigor, and his body emitted a dignified aura. Explanation? What explanation do you want? Gray asked with a chuckle. Marquis Oka put his hands behind his back and spoke with a condescending gaze. Break whichever hand that injured him, patriarch. At this moment, a voice interrupted him. The person who spoke was a black-clothed old man beside him. The old man's eyes were small, not much bigger than a mouse's eyes. He was the barbarian blood warrior from the Orca family who had fought with Gray before. When he recognized Gray, his expression changed. He hurriedly interrupted Marquis Oka and whispered a few words in his ear. What? It's him. Then, Marquis Oka's expression changed, and his gaze towards Gray was filled with wariness. He had naturally heard of Gray. He had heard from the black-clothed old man that Gray had displayed great fighting strength in the king's graveyard. If he was not mistaken, his opponent's fighting strength was close to the second level of the barbarian level. He was definitely extremely powerful. When he heard that one of the parties involved in the conflict was the Sidney family, he thought that the one who injured Duke Smalley was from the Sidney family. He naturally did not take the Sidney family seriously since there were only 3 people left in the family. However, he could not help but be wary of Gray Fergus, who had reached the second level of the barbarian level. The hand is right here. You can come and try. Gray raised his right hand that had punched Duke Smalley's face and said with a cold smile, "Let's go." Marquis Oka glanced at Gray with wariness, coldness, and anger in his eyes. He then called Duke Smalley and turned to leave. Although they had 2 barbarian blood warriors here, they might not be a match for the other party. Therefore, he decisively chose to retreat. This was the usual style of the Orca family. When faced with people or forces that they could not afford to offend, they would take the initiative to retreat. It was the same when the head of the Sidney family was still strong. Now, it was the same when facing the powerful Gray. The Orca family actually retreated. What's going on? Logically speaking, the Sidney family should not have the power to intimidate the Orca family. The onlookers were all puzzled. They did not understand why the Orca family, who had been so powerful just a moment ago, retreated. Although Gray's reputation was great in the Sidney Hill, it was not enough to enter the ears of the nobles of the kingdom. Therefore, there were still very few people who knew about Gray. Gray, thank you. Gray and his siblings thanked Gray solemnly. They naturally understood that Gray was standing up for them. You don't have to be so polite with me. Gray smiled and shook his head. He was a person who held grudges, but also a person who remembered kindness. He would not let go of his enemies, but he would remember those who had helped him. Lord Lind, for example, had helped him when he was at his weakest. Although it was a very small matter, he did not forget that when the Fergus family was preparing to enfeoffment the barons, he took the opportunity to give Lind the title of baron. The Sidney family had treated the Fergus family well. Now that Zero and his siblings were being bullied, and he had the ability to stand up for them, he naturally would not shirk his responsibility. It's about time. Gray's eyes revealed a faint coldness as he scanned his surroundings. After entering Neum City, Gray had discovered that he was being watched. Although the other party's surveillance was very subtle, and several people took turns to monitor him to avoid being exposed, with Gray's current insight as a brute blood warrior, he was still able to detect it. It went without saying what kind of power was monitoring him in Neum City, so when he encountered Duke Smalley, the traitor of Sidney City, he didn't hesitate to make a move, even if it would cause a huge commotion. Since he had already been discovered, he did not care about causing a huge commotion. It really is you. At this moment, a voice rang out. Following this voice, a group of 10-odd people walked over, led by 2 young men. One of them had fair skin and a handsome face. His head was slightly raised, and he exuded a sense of arrogance. The other was a few years older, with a handsome face and deep eyes. He exuded a calm and noble temperament. This was the young man who had just spoken. Seeing these two, the surrounding people's eyes were filled with reverence, because they were direct descendants of the Duke Nahum family, one of the three great Duke families. Although the Nahum family had been forced to retreat repeatedly in the battle with the Flame Kingdom's coalition army, this did not mean that the Nahum family was weak. It could only be said that the Flame Kingdom's coalition army was too strong. After all, it was the strength of an entire country. You've really hidden well. My Nahum family has been searching for you for over a year, but we haven't been able to find any trace of you. The slightly younger noble youth, Nathan Nahum, stared at Gray with a sinister gaze, his face full of mockery. The Nahum family had been searching for him for over a year, but it was as if he had disappeared without a trace. This time, if he had not entered Nahum City, they might not have been able to discover him. Looking for me? Why are you looking for me? I remember that the conflict with you back then has already been resolved? Gray said with a calm expression. The conflict back then had indeed been resolved, but I didn't expect you to be so narrow-minded, harboring a grudge against the Nahum family's servant who had once fought with you, and secretly killed him. The young man Warner Nahum, who was slightly older, said with a cold look in his eyes. Young Master Warner, could there be some misunderstanding here? I know Gray very well. He would never do such a thing. Zero recognized the young man's identity, and his expression changed slightly. He hurriedly spoke up to defend Gray, but Warner Nahum unceremoniously reprimanded him coldly. This has nothing to do with your Sydney family. You'd better stay out of it. Even if it was the previous Sydney family, the Nahum family did not put them in their eyes, let alone the current Sydney family, which only had 3 people left in the entire family. Assassinate your servant? Amazing, really amazing. I think the Nahum family's ability to distort black and white is much stronger than your Nahum family's strength. Gray said with a mocking expression. It was obvious that the Nahum family was determined to obtain the silver medal ball and had sent their servant to assassinate him, but he was not a match for him and had been killed instead. Unexpectedly, when it came to the other party, it became him harboring a grudge against the Nahum family's servant, who had once fought with him, and assassinated the Nahum family's servant. You still want to quibble? The facts and evidence are right in front of you. Your quibbling is useless, Warner Nahum said with a cold expression. Evidence? What evidence do you have? Gray looked at the other party, amused. He wanted to see what kind of evidence the other party could come up with. It's him, young Master Warner. He's the one who killed Mashio. I was there at the time. This person wanted to kill me to silence me, but I escaped. A middle-aged man dressed as a servant walked out from the group of more than 10 people from the Nahum family, pointed his finger at Gray, and said with certainty. Gray looked at the middle-aged man. He was one of the people who had followed behind the 2 brothers last time. Gray walked toward the middle-aged man, and the middle-aged man could not help but retreat. Whoosh! Gray appeared beside the middle-aged man in an instant and punched him in the stomach. The middle-aged man flew out with a bent body and a painful expression on his face. He crashed into a wall and the wall collapsed. You still dare to be fierce. Seeing that the middle-aged man was injured by Gray, the Warner Nahum siblings, as well as more than 10 people who had followed them, immediately surrounded Gray with unfriendly expressions. Surrounded by more than 10 people, Gray looked calm and said indifferently, You can't even block one of my moves, and you think you can escape from me? Even if you want to find someone to lie, you should find someone stronger. As soon as Gray said this, many of the onlookers had thoughtful looks in their eyes. Indeed, the middle-aged man's strength was too weak. He couldn't even block one punch from the other party, so how could he escape from the other party's hands? They were starting to believe that the Nahum family had set up the other party. Chapter 384. It's useless to quibble. Feeling the faint suspicion in the eyes of the people around him, Warner Nahum didn't intend to give Gray a chance to explain and coldly ordered, Catch him. Following his order, more than 10 people who followed him suddenly rushed out and pounced on Gray. Among them, 4 were berserkers. Their hands were either claw-like or fists. Their eyes were cold, and their attacks were ruthless, with the intention of directly crippling Gray. Humph! Looking at the more than 10 people who pounced on him ruthlessly, Gray's eyes were cold as he coldly snorted. With this cold snort, a white chill spread out with him as the center. Caw-caw! This was an extremely terrifying chill. On the ground, with Gray as the center, a large amount of ice spread out in all directions. The more than 10 people who pounced on Gray, including the 4 berserkers, turned into ice sculptures in an instant. But the spread of the chill didn't end there. The terrifying chill spread out in all directions, and everything that came in contact with it turned into ice. The first to bear the brunt of it was Warner Nahum and his brother, who were closer. Whoosh! Warner Nahum grabbed Nathan Nahum, and before the cold air arrived, Kankin dodged the pervasive cold air. "You're actually a berserker. I really underestimated you." Retreating out of the range of the chill, Warner Nahum's face was gloomy. He originally thought that it was just a berserker, but he didn't expect that the other party was already a berserker. "But with just this little strength, you dare not put my Nahum family in your eyes. You're underestimating my Nahum family too much." At this point, Warner Nahum's eyes revealed a cold chill. "You know very well in your heart what happened," Gray said coldly. As if he didn't hear Gray's words, Warner Nahum continued. "First, you killed a berserker from my Nahum family. Now, you've killed several members of my Nahum family. I can't let you live." Under the cold air just now, the 4 berserkers should be able to survive, but the remaining ones who had not reached the berserker level might have already been frozen to death on the spot. Clang! Warner Nahum pulled out an exquisite long sword from his waist. The body of the sword was greenish-gray, as if it was polished from a green rock. The hilt of the sword was engraved with the image of a strange beast. It was very subtle and slightly tilted, as if it was about to jump out. Holding the long sword in his hand, Warner Nahum's aura suddenly became fierce, like an unsheathed sword, exuding a cold, killing intent. Whoosh! Like a gust of wind, he appeared in front of Gray in the blink of an eye. The speed he displayed in an instant had definitely reached the level of a berserker. Even among those in the berserker realm, he was definitely at the top. His power was also at the berserker level. As the most valued direct descendant of the Nahum family, few people could compare to him in terms of talent and resources. Under such circumstances, his power was naturally not weak. As he approached Gray, the long sword in his hand had already been ruthlessly slashed towards Gray's waist, wanting to cut Gray's waist into 2. Whoosh! Gray retreated, avoiding the sword. The magic sword that had accompanied him for a few years was broken. He did not have a suitable weapon now, so he was not willing to use a weapon to fight in close combat with his opponent. Whoosh! Warner Nahum was in hot pursuit. He caught up with Gray once again, and stabbed his sword with murderous intent towards Gray's heart. Before the sword could reach him, the invisible wind pressure slammed into Gray's body, causing Gray's clothes to flutter. Humph! Gray coldly snorted. His opponent's speed was above his. He was like a maggot attached to a bone. It was not possible to dodge. However, this was not a problem for him. Suddenly, a cold air came out in front of him, as if a huge fog dragon was rolling. Everything it encountered along the way was turned into ice, and it went straight for Warner Nahum, who was thrusting his sword at him. Whoosh! Knowing the power of this cold air, Warner Nahum did not dare to take it head-on. He dodged to the side. The cold air spread out from where he was originally standing. 100-meter-long ice road appeared. Some of the onlookers were shocked and quickly dodged. Some of them could not dodge in time and were immediately covered in ice. They only managed to break out of the ice with the help of their companions. Fortunately, they were only affected by the cold air. Otherwise, they would have been frozen to death like the servants of the Nahum family. Retreat, retreat quickly. They are all berserker blood warriors. The onlookers had a bad feeling. They did not expect that there would be danger just to watch the show. They retreated as if they were avoiding snakes and scorpions. In the end, there was not a single person within 200 meters of the two. Caw. Gray didn't stop after sending out a wave of cold air. The second cold air. The third cold air. The cold air was like a huge mist dragon wrapped in frost. It covered a large area and continuously attacked Warner Nahum. Warner Nahum dodged continuously. He was the fastest berserker blood warrior that Gray had ever seen. His speed had definitely reached the peak of the berserker realm. Gray even felt that the speed of the second-level berserker blood warrior that he met in the king's graveyard was much slower than Warner Nahum. However, Gray's cold air was an area of effect attack with a very wide range. After Warner Nahum dodged several times in a row, he was still affected by the cold air. Half of his body was covered in ice, and his movements were hindered. Gray naturally would not miss this opportunity. Another cold air attacked. It was like a mist dragon baring its fangs and 5 claws as it pounced on Warner Nahum. Gotcha! Half of his body was covered in ice and a cold air attacked him. Warner Nahum's expression changed slightly. He quickly broke free from the ice on his body. Then, suddenly, a huge green wind blade appeared in front of him. Puff! The white cold air was cut in half by the green wind blade. It avoided Warner Nahum and split into two. The surface of the green wind blade was also covered in ice. Finally, it shattered with a gotcha. You should be proud of yourself for forcing me to use my blood beast ability. Warner Nahum looked down at Gray arrogantly. As a member of the Duke's family, the blood technique that he cultivated was quite powerful among the special blood techniques. Not only did he have a speed that few people in the same realm could match, but he also had a special level of wind attribute blood beast ability. Most of the time, he only relied on a speed that few people in the same realm could match, but it was enough to defeat people of the same generation. It was rare for him to be forced to use his blood beast ability. Whoosh! He moved. With a burst of terrifying speed, he pounced directly at Gray. Gray's cold air attacked him, but he did not dodge. A huge green wind blade appeared and cut the cold air in half. The wind blade also shattered, and he scuttled between the two halves of the cold air. Puff, puff, puff. After slashing through several streams of cold air, he pounced in front of Gray. The long sword, which looked like it was carved from green rock, slashed from top left to bottom right. The air was torn apart like a piece of cloth, and a fierce wind swept across. Anyone who saw him slash out with his sword could not help but feel a chill run down their spines. They felt extreme danger from the sword. Gray, be careful! Seeing that Gray was in danger, Earl Fergus, Bernal, Polly, Zeloyan, and the others all cried out in alarm. But their cries could not stop the green sword from slashing down. It looked like the green sword was about to cut through Gray's shoulder. At this moment, Gray did something that no one expected. He did not dodge, nor did he take out a weapon from the purple ring to block. Instead, he turned a blind eye to the green sword and punched out at Warner Nahum. Puff! The long sword and the fist landed on Gray and Warner Nahum at the same time, and then the two figures flew backward. One of the figures was particularly miserable because it flew backward with blood. But this figure was not Gray as everyone expected, but Warner Nahum. Bang! Warner Nahum fell heavily on the stone floor, cracking it. His stooped body seemed to have suffered a serious injury, and he spat out several mouthfuls of blood. Big brother! Nathan Nahum almost thought that his eyes were playing tricks on him. Just now, his big brother clearly had the upper hand. How could his big brother suddenly suffer a serious injury? What happened in front of him made him feel a little incredulous. Since childhood, when fighting with people of the same generation, except for that freak Kenneth, his big brother, who had never lost, actually suffered a big loss at the hands of his opponent. What's going on? Did anyone see what happened in that instant just now? The surrounding onlookers were all puzzled. Warner Nahum, who clearly had the upper hand, suffered a serious injury, but Gray, who was completely at a disadvantage, did not seem to be seriously injured. What a strong defense! Among the onlookers there was a tall, blue-haired young man. He was Gavin Kenneth, from the Duke's Kenneth family. He was a young powerhouse who had walked a long way on the path of a brute blood warrior. At this moment, he looked at Gray, who was crawling up from the ground, and his pupils could not help but shrink. With his eyesight, even though he was more than 200 meters away, he could still clearly see that Gray's clothes, which had been cut by the sword, were only a few scratches. This kind of injury, even if no external medicine was used, would heal in 2 or 3 days at most. It could not be considered an injury at all. The power of the sword slashed by a brute blood warrior was naturally not weak. However, the other party only suffered such a small injury. It could be imagined that the other party's defense was very strong. He felt that the other party's defense was not much worse than that of a brute blood warrior. And his strength is also extremely terrifying. Looking at Warner Nahum, who had not gotten up for a long time, there was a hint of seriousness in his eyes. He was very clear about the blood techniques of the Nahum family. Although the defense was not the best, it was definitely at the top level. Warner Nahum, who had such a strong defense, was actually seriously injured by the other party's punch and could not get up for a long time. It could be imagined how strong the destructive power of the other party's punch was. It was definitely not inferior to the ability of a special brute-level blood beast. Cough, cough. After coughing out another mouthful of blood, Warner Nahum used his sword to support himself and stood up. There was blood at the corner of his mouth, and he looked miserable. He stared at Gray, who was not injured, with shock and disbelief in his eyes. No matter how he looked at it, he should have had the upper hand, but he had actually lost to the other party. Go to hell! The look in his eyes changed again and again. In the end, it turned into a cold, murderous look. He stabbed the green longsword in his hand into the ground and continued to pour the power of his blood into the green longsword. Clang! Not far from him, the earth and rocks tumbled. First, a huge green stone hand stretched out, then another hand, then a head, and finally, a huge green stone giant forcibly crawled out from the ground. Chapter 385. This was a 10-meter-tall bluestone giant. It was extremely sturdy and burly. Its 2 feet were as large as 2 small boats, and its hands were even larger than millstones. Under the sunlight, 2 large shadows were cast on its body. Its pair of large scarlet eyes flashed with a bloodthirsty light like that of a wild beast. Its huge head rotated and locked onto Gray. Crack! He lifted his foot and took a step forward. The stone slabs on the ground immediately cracked and shattered. There were even fragments of stone flying everywhere. Accompanied by a rumbling sound, he was like a huge mountain as he walked towards Gray. Whoosh! Sensing that the bluestone giant was not simple, Gray released a blast of cold air towards the bluestone giant. However, the bluestone giant did not dodge and allowed the cold air to hit its body. A layer of ice immediately formed on the surface of the bluestone giant. Crack! But in the next moment, the bluestone giant broke free from the ice. Its movements were not affected at all, and it continued to step towards Gray. Although its steps were slow, the bluestone giant's movements were not slow. It covered more than 10 meters with each step. After a few more steps, it was already half the distance to Gray. What powerful strength! Gray was slightly surprised. With the strength of a barbarian blood warrior, the ice condensed from the cold air was much harder than ordinary ice. However, it was so easy to break free from it. One could imagine how powerful the green stone giant was. Even though he had obtained the special characteristics of the purple blood fiend, his strength was definitely not as strong as this bluestone giant. Swish, swish, swish. Countless wind blades surrounded Gray and attacked the bluestone giant like a storm. Clang, clang, clang. A series of sparks bloomed as all the wind blades hit the bluestone giant. It was as if they had hit a steel plate. There was not a single wound on the bluestone giant's body. It's useless. With my current strength, the bluestone puppet can reach the second level of the berserker level. Warner Nahum sneered when he saw that Gray's attack didn't leave a single wound on the green stone giant. As a direct descendant of the Nahum family, and also the most favored direct descendant, the weapon he used would not be simple. It might not have reached the silver grade, but it was at the peak of the bronze grade. It was enough to bring out the power of a second-level berserker. If the purple blood beast could reach the unique level of the berserker level with its strength and defense, then the green stone giant could reach the second level of the berserker level with its strength and defense. Dong, dong, dong. The green stone giant stepped towards Gray. Every step felt like it was stomping on Gray's heart. It pressed down on Gray. However, at this moment Gray smiled. As expected of a duke's family, a direct descendant actually possesses a magic weapon of this level. He gazed at the cyan longsword in Warner Nahum's hand, his eyes filled with desire. Wasn't a bronze-ranked mana weapon exactly what he needed? Idiot, you're about to die, and you're still smiling. Nathan Nahum sneered from afar. He was very clear about the destructive power of a second-level berserker level. He was sure that his opponent would not be able to resist it. Seeing that the green stone giant could not intimidate Gray, the coldness in Warner Nahum's eyes became even more intense. Suddenly, the green stone giant that was slowly moving forward started running. With a rumbling sound, its huge palm slapped down on Gray as if it was swatting a fly. Its violent power was undeniable. Whoosh! Gray looked coldly at the green stone giant that was pouncing towards him. At this moment, a long cyan river suddenly appeared. The white cold air was densely packed with wind blades. It was as if a river of stars had fallen from the sky and crashed into the green stone giant. Boom! After being hit by the long cyan river, the green stone giant looked as if it had been hit by a train. Its body that was running forward plowed out two terrifying traces, sliding in the direction it came from. Bumps and hollows appeared on its surface, which were caused by the wind blades in the long cyan river. Moreover, its entire body was sealed in ice. It was different from the cold air that was released by itself. The cold air that was released by a combination of the cold ice and wind blades had a more terrifying freezing effect. The green stone giant struggled once, but was unable to break free from the ice on its body. How could this be? The coldness in Warner Nahum's eyes became sluggish. The green stone giant that he originally thought would be easily destroyed by the opponent was actually injured. It was even frozen in ice and could not break free immediately. This is a combination of abilities? What made him even more surprised was that the ability that the opponent used not only contained wind blades, but also cold air. This was clearly a combination of abilities that was only a legend during the Empire. It's him. The blue-haired young man's body suddenly emitted a powerful aura. His gaze towards Gray was filled with a strong desire to fight. So it's him. The last time the Tomb of the King had appeared, there were people from the Kenneth family who had participated. They had even obtained a silver-ranked magic weapon. During that battle, there was a young man who had reached the second level of the berserker level. Although he did not participate, he heard about the existence of such a young man from his family. As the number one person in the 3rd Duke and 7th Marquis family, his desire to fight was strong. He wanted to find this person and fight with him. When he saw Gray use a combination of the cold ice and wind blades, he immediately understood that Gray was the young man who appeared in the Tomb of the King. Break free! Warner Nahum ordered the green stone giant. Crack! After struggling twice, the green stone giant finally broke free from the ice with its great strength. Its scarlet eyes stared at Gray as it quickly swung its legs and pounced towards Gray. Another cyan river appeared and crashed into the green stone giant. At this moment, under Warner Nahum's command, the green stone giant's fist, which was bigger than a millstone, smashed towards the cyan river. Boom. This was an extremely terrifying punch. When the power reached a certain level, it would also become extremely terrifying. Like a comet exploding, the Cyan River exploded under this punch. However, the cold air in the Cyan River was pervasive. It was like an awl attached to the bone as it wrapped around the green stone giant's body. The surface of the green stone giant was suddenly covered with hard ice, as if it was 1,000-year-old ice that was firmly frozen on the green stone giant's body. Crack! The green stone giant struggled violently and immediately broke free from the hard ice on its body. However, at this moment, another Cyan River appeared and crashed into the green stone giant's body. Boom! The green stone giant looked as if it had been hit by a waterfall that fell from 10,000 meters high and was directly sent flying by the impact. Visible wounds and ice appeared on its body. In the end, it turned into an ice sculpture and crashed heavily on the ground. He actually blocked it? Nathan Nahum screamed and looked at Gray as if he was looking at a monster. He actually blocked the green stone giant's attack that had reached the second level of the Berserker level. Its power has reached the second level of the Berserker level. Around them, the onlookers who knew what level of power this was were all shocked. They were not surprised that Warner Nahum had a magical weapon that could display the destructive power of the second level of the Berserker level. After all, the other party came from the family of Duke Nahum, which had once produced a king-level warrior. It was not surprising that he had such a background. However, Gray did not seem to have relied on a magical weapon. Instead, he relied on his own combat power to reach the second level of the Berserker level. This was already surprising to them. After all, the other party was only in his early 20s. Boom, boom, boom. The Cyan River and the green stone giant kept colliding. The ground kept freezing and cracking. Some of the houses that were affected completely collapsed. Fortunately, because of the previous battle, the people in these houses had already evacuated. Otherwise, there would be casualties. Patter! The surface of the green stone giant's body was already covered with wounds. It was like an exhausted soldier who had gone through a tough battle on the battlefield. Finally, under the Cyan River's impact, the green stone giant's entire body cracked and shattered, turning into a pile of green boulders. Impossible, the power of the second level of the Berserker level can't be defeated. Warner Nahum's voice was filled with anger and disbelief. He took out a bottle of recovery medicine and swallowed it. Then, he infused the cyan sword in his hand with the power of blood, wanting to summon the green stone giant again. Whoosh! Of course, Gray would not allow this to happen. A Cyan River struck out, and Warner Nahum was sent flying with his sword. His body was covered with wounds and was frozen in ice. Under the layer of ice, he was so cold that his whole body was shivering. It was as if his soul was about to be frozen. He struggled violently, but the ice created by the mixed ability was abnormally hard. He struggled a few times before he could break free. Whoosh! Suddenly, he felt a flash of light in front of him. His right hand hurt, and the sword in his hand disappeared. When he looked up, he realized that the sword had fallen into Gray's hands. "Give it back to me." Warner Nahum was about to go crazy. Not only had he been defeated, but his weapon had also been taken away by his opponent. He roared, and at the same time, he threw a wind blade at Gray. At the same time, he also threw himself at Gray. Gray only waved his hand slightly, and a Cyan River appeared. The wind blade was shattered, and Warner Nahum was hit by the Cyan River. There were more wounds on his body, and he was sent flying. This was the result of Gray holding back. Otherwise, with the destructive power of the second level of the Berserker level, he could have been killed. But Warner Nahum, who was sent flying, did not fall to the ground. Instead, he was caught by a hand. It was a withered palm, but it had unimaginable destructive power. The hand that touched the surface of the ice shook slightly, and all the ice on the surface of Warner Nahum shattered, but Warner Nahum, who was inside, didn't suffer any damage. The owner of the hand was an old man with a withered face. He looked at Gray. At this moment, Gray felt as if he was being stared at by a ferocious beast. Desolate Blood Warrior. These 4 words suddenly jumped out in his mind. Chapter 386. Desolate Blood Warrior. Although he had yet to see the old man make a move, Gray could already determine that the old man in front of him was definitely a desolate blood warrior. The pressure from the old man was simply too strong. Just by standing there, he gave off the feeling of a mountain. From the old man's body, a chilling aura filled the air, mixed with a hint of blood. It was as if the gates of hell had been opened, and the aura from within permeated the air. Facing the old man was like facing a peerless beast, and this was just the pressure from the old man's gaze on Gray. "Granduncle, it's him," Warner Nahum said respectfully to the old man. The old man nodded and then walked towards Gray. With just one step, a terrifying aura, like that of a collapsing mountain, pressed down on Gray's body, as if it wanted to crush Gray into smithereens. "Let me see how strong a desolate blood warrior is," Gray snorted coldly. The old man's aura was indeed extremely strong, but it was not enough to make him stretch out his neck for a slaughter. Whoosh! A long green river appeared, and it was even larger than the one from the previous battle. Gray pushed his mixed ability of ice and wind blades to the limit. The terrifying cold air was filled with countless wind blades that looked like they were polished from green metal. Like a mighty waterfall falling from a height of 10,000 meters, they crashed towards the skinny old man of the Nahum family. This was an extremely terrifying attack. Feeling the terror of this attack, the surrounding onlookers could not help but retreat a little, but facing such an attack, the old man's expression was extremely calm. Woo-woo! A fierce wind suddenly blew, and then a huge green tornado suddenly appeared, wrapping around the old man. Boom! When the green river collided with the green tornado, it was torn apart like a piece of cloth. Whether it was the bone-chilling cold air or the sharp metal wind blades, they were unable to pass through the green tornado and get close to the old man in the center of the green tornado. The cyan tornado was like a natural barrier, blocking the wind blades and cold air outside. In the end, the azure river disappeared, and the azure tornado that was covered in frost shattered with a crack. The skinny old man walked out with a calm expression. To have such strength at such an age, your talent is indeed not bad. Unfortunately, you shouldn't have made an enemy of the Nahum family. The skinny old man spoke for the first time. His voice was hoarse, like the sound of metal scraping against each other. His figure was stooped. He was clearly shorter than Gray, but he looked down at Gray as if he was looking down on him. "I shouldn't be an enemy of the Nahum family. What should I do to not be an enemy of the Nahum family?" Gray's face was filled with mockery. "As long as it's something that the Nahum family wants, you'll hand it over unconditionally with both hands. Otherwise, you'll be making an enemy out of the Nahum family?" The surrounding onlookers were curious as to how Gray had provoked the Nahum family. Now that they heard Gray's words, they finally understood. "I find it strange. How did this person provoke the Nahum family? Logically speaking, the other party wouldn't provoke the Nahum family. So it's the Nahum family who wants to steal from others. The Nahum family has gone too far. Isn't the Nahum family afraid of provoking public anger by doing this?" Many people were discussing in low voices. Their gazes towards the people of the Nahum family were filled with vigilance. Today, the Nahum family was stealing from others. Tomorrow, they might steal from them. As nobles of the kingdom, who didn't have good things in their family, if they were targeted, they would be in danger. Stealing by force. The Nahum family is still the same. The blue-haired young man sneered disdainfully, not hiding his voice like the others. Other families were afraid of the Nahum family, but he was not afraid of the Nahum family. In fact, it was the other way around. The Ham family was afraid of his family. As a family that still had a king-class warrior, he had the confidence to do so. Sure enough, When Warner Nahum and Nathan Nahum heard this undisguised slander and followed the voice to look at him, their pupils shrank, but they did not flare up. What a sharp tongue! Seeing that Gray's words had caused a commotion, the skinny old man's gaze turned cold. In front of him, a huge wind blade more than 10 meters long appeared, like a weapon used by gods and demons. It tore through the vacuum, shattered the air, and slashed at Gray. Everything they encountered along the way was silently split into two halves. A 2-story house was merely brushed by the aftermath of the huge wind blade, and it was already split into two halves at the waist. This was a terrifying attack, one whose power had reached the desolation level. He obviously wanted to kill Gray with one blow, not giving Gray a chance to continue speaking. Gray's face was solemn. On the huge wind blade, he could feel a bone-chilling aura of sharpness. He activated his lightning metal ability, and countless metal blades flashing with lightning turned into a huge sword flashing with lightning, meeting the huge wind blade with great momentum. Crack! But in front of the huge wind blade, the huge sword flashing with lightning was cut into pieces like rotten wood. The huge wind blade continued to slash at Gray. Obviously, even if its power had reached the second level of the barbarian level, there was still a big gap between it and the desolation level. Bang! Gray gritted his teeth and blocked the incoming huge wind blade with his sword. But the long sword was easily knocked away by the huge wind blade, and the huge wind blade hit him squarely. As if he had been hit by a train, he flew backward like a cannonball, crashing into a house. The whole house collapsed instantly. Gray! Looking at Gray, who had crashed into the house, Earl Fergus and the others were anxious, and they hurriedly ran towards the house. What a pity! Some of the onlookers shook their heads. Gray's strength at the second level of the barbarian level was not weak, but he had met a desolation blood warrior, so he was doomed. The difference between the desolation level and the barbarian level was too great, so great that people could not see any hope. This is the result of making an enemy out of the Nahum family. Warner Nahum and Nathan Nahum sneered. Until now, those who had made an enemy out of the Nahum family had never had a good ending. It was the same for the people in the past, and it was the same for the opponents now. Boom! Just as Count Fergus and the others were halfway there, the collapsed house that had submerged Gray suddenly exploded with rocks and soil, and a silhouette was revealed. Gray, Earl Fergus and the others were surprised. He's not dead? The onlookers were surprised. It was a figure whose entire body was covered in bronze. Although the color of his skin had changed, from his face and body shape, it was undoubtedly Gray. Gray stepped out of the ruins of the house. Although his clothes were tattered, his steps were steady, and there were no signs of him being seriously injured. There was a long wound on his abdomen, and there were traces of dark red blood seeping out. Hiss! Many people who saw this wound couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. This kind of injury wasn't too serious, but too light. Under the power of a desolation-level wind blade, not only did he not die, but he also suffered such a small injury. In their eyes, it was a miracle. How could this be? Warner Nahum and his brother were stunned. How could the opponent's defense be so strong? Even a desolation blood warrior would not suffer such a light injury after receiving such an attack. Did this not mean that the opponent's defense was stronger than a desolation blood warrior's? Looking at the wound on his abdomen, Gray became more confident. The defense of the purple blood beast and the metallization of the copperback dragon had indeed increased his defense to an extremely terrifying level. Even a desolation blood warrior would not be able to cause him much damage. Are you tickling me? He looked at the skinny old man from the Nahum family mockingly. You don't know what's good for you. The skinny old man's face was ashen. With his strength as a desolation blood warrior, he actually could not take down a desolation blood warrior immediately. The coldness in his eyes seemed to turn into rays of light. Whoosh! A huge tornado appeared, sweeping up the surrounding rubble. It was dozens of meters tall, connecting heaven and earth, and crashed toward Gray. Gray raised the green demonic sword. Then, a large amount of metal powder and lightning wrapped around the green demonic sword. In an instant, the green demonic sword turned into a huge sword that was dozens of meters long, with purple lightning wrapped around it. The terrifying strength combined with the power of lightning and metal, and the sword slashed toward the tornado. Bang! The huge sword shattered, and Gray was sent flying. He flew more than 100 meters before landing heavily on the ground. Climbing up from the ground, Gray had a few more wounds on his body. His clothes were tattered, but the onlookers did not mock him. They looked at him with dignified and respectful gazes. To be able to exchange blows with a desolate blood warrior and not die, how could such a person be someone they could mock? Bang, bang, bang! Rubble flew everywhere, and dust filled the air. The onlookers had no choice but to retreat again and again, widening the distance between them. This was a strange battle. One of them possessed a terrifyingly powerful destructive power. Every attack was like a meteor crashing down, destroying everything in its path. The other side had a terrifyingly powerful defense. His entire body seemed to be made of precious demonic metal, indestructible and difficult to destroy. The battle between the two sides was in a stalemate, with no one able to do anything to the other. Gray could not attack the skinny old man, and the skinny old man's attacks could not cause much damage to Gray. The huge commotion had already alarmed the entire Neum city. Many noble families rushed over. However, everyone who saw this scene was shocked. There was actually a barbaric blood warrior who could fight with a desolation blood warrior. They all inquired about Gray's identity. "It's Gray. This is his full strength. He can fight with a desolation blood warrior and not lose." Among them, there were naturally people from the Cumberland family. The Cumberland sisters were among them. Both of them were shocked. So this was the opponent's full strength. At this moment, an old man with a gloomy face walked into the field. Seeing this old man, many people's expressions turned serious. Even the desolation blood warriors present were the same. He was the previous head of the Nahum family. His strength was extremely terrifying, and it was said that he had completed at least one round of cultivation. Chapter 387. Tap, tap, tap. Although the elder with a gloomy face was very old, he still had a tall and straight posture. Under his blue aristocratic robes, one could clearly see the contours of his strong and firm muscles. His footsteps were not heavy, but they sounded like the beating of a drum, causing people to involuntarily look at him. An aura that was even more powerful than the skinny elder's pressed down on Gray like a huge wave in the ocean. "He's even stronger than the skinny elder." Gray's expression turned grave. The green-clothed old man that had appeared was clearly more powerful than the previous old man. His aura was so condensed that it seemed to have substance, as if it was about to transform into the pressure of a king. He felt that even with his current defense, he would not be able to last long against the elder. The elder's strength should have already exceeded that of a normal Fang blood warrior. If he was not wrong, this elder was very likely a desolate blood warrior who had already completed 1 or 2 rounds of training. He had already walked very far on the path of a desolate blood warrior. You indeed have some strength. No wonder you dare to provoke the Nahum family." The green-robed elder looked at Gray with a cold look in his eyes. "Provoke the Nahum family? Nahum family, can you be any more shameless?" Gray was angered by the elder's words and sneered. "If you want to take by force, then take by force. Don't label others as provokers for no reason. Such a big Duke family, don't you even have this bit of courage?" The 2 Warner Nahum brothers had slandered him for secretly harming the Nahum family's servants. The skinny elder had slandered him for being an enemy of the Nahum family, and the green-clothed elder had slandered him for provoking the Nahum family. It should be said that they were truly worthy of being from the same family. Their words were all equally shameless. The moment they had arrived, they had labeled him with a big label. Then, they could safely kill him without tarnishing their own reputation. After all, he was the one who had provoked them first. You don't know what's good for you. Even now, you still dare to slander the Nahum family. The skinny elder reprimanded. Slander? Don't you know in your heart whether I'm slandering you? Gray sneered. Not only did you provoke the Nahum family, but you also dared to slander the Nahum family. Today, I will use your blood to wash away the insult to the Nahum family. The green-robed old man's eyes were filled with intense killing intent, locking onto Gray like two sharp blades. The skinny old man locked onto Gray from another direction. His eyes were also filled with murderous intent. I have no choice but to use the forbidden artifact. Gray prepared to take out the forbidden artifact. Facing two desolate blood warriors, one of whom had most likely completed 1 or 2 rounds of cultivation, had already exceeded the limits of what he could contend with at the moment. Only a forbidden artifact could deter the two of them. Although they could also use spatial teleportation to leave, Earl Fergus and the others who stayed here would most likely be in danger. Stop! The two elders prepared to attack Gray, and Gray prepared to take out the forbidden artifact. The atmosphere was on the verge of exploding. At this moment, a cold voice rang out. The crowd in the distance parted, and a group of people walked out. The leader was a young woman in a blue dress. The woman had a head of gorgeous purple hair. Under the sunlight, it shone brightly and was as soft as silk. She had a slender figure, a flawless face, and skin as white as jade. Her body exuded an incomparable nobility. Your Highness the Second Princess! Your Highness the Second Princess! Seeing her appear, the surrounding aristocratic family members could not help but greet her respectfully. This person was Sophia. Your Highness the Second Princess, I'm sorry to have alarmed you. It's not that the Nahum family is bullying you. It's him who attacked the Nahum family and provoked the Nahum family first. Seeing Sophia appear, the two Warner Nahum brothers and some other members of the Nahum family hurriedly greeted her and respectfully explained to Sophia. Sophia turned her head and looked coldly at Warner Nahum, who spoke. Her eyes were cold, and the latter's heart thumped. He had a bad feeling. Don't you find it strange? With the Nahum family's intelligence capabilities, why haven't they found any traces of him after searching for more than a year? Sophia asked coldly. Your Highness the Second Princess, you mean? Cold sweat appeared on Warner Nahum's forehead, and the bad feeling in his heart intensified. No matter how he looked at it, the Second Princess did not seem to be just a coincidence. Otherwise, how would she know that the Nahum family had been searching for him for more than a year? I was the one who stopped the Nahum family from searching, Sophia said coldly, and then her voice was filled with anger. The threat of the Flame Kingdom is imminent, but you're robbing the nobles who came to support. Warner Nahum, is there anything you don't dare to do? Your Highness the Second Princess, Warner Nahum panicked. With the Nahum family's intelligence capabilities, they could not find the other party. He was indeed a little puzzled, but after knowing that there was news of the other party, he did not think too much about it. But he did not expect that behind the scenes, it was the royal family who was obstructing them. Moreover, the other party seemed to have a close relationship with the Second Princess. Otherwise, why would the Second Princess stop them and stand up for him in public? Slap! A palm appeared and slapped Warner Nahum's face fiercely. Immediately, Warner Nahum was sent flying and fell to the ground, blood flowing from his mouth. The one who made the move was a majestic man who somewhat resembled Warner Nahum. This was the current head of the Nahum family. He looked at Sophia with an apologetic face. Your Highness the Second Princess, please forgive him. Everything was done by this playboy on his own initiative. It was not the Nahum family's intention. My father and uncle were also deceived by him. Sophia took a deep look at the current head of the Nahum family and said, Duke Nahum, please strengthen your discipline. This kind of behavior is a disgrace to the noble's reputation and smearing the reputation of the nobles of the entire Purple Moon Kingdom. Such a large-scale mobilization of the Nahum family's forces was obviously not something a direct descendant could do. However, she had to give the Nahum family a way out. After all, she was only a princess of the royal family and not the heir to the throne. Although her status was precious, she did not have much power. Strictly speaking, she did not have the right to give orders to the Nahum family. Therefore, she could only use the general situation to pressure the Nahum family and force the Nelm family to make concessions. Moreover, she could not go too far. Otherwise, it would backfire and cause the Nahum family to tear apart their pretense and disregard their reputation. Your Highness the Second Princess is right. I will strengthen my discipline, Duke Reem hurriedly said. The storm had completely ended with the Nahum family's concession and Grey's victory. Grey's name was destined to spread among the nobles of the Purple Moon Kingdom. Although he was a nobleman and was only in his 20s, he had the strength to contend with the desolate blood warriors. Such a battle record could be called a miracle. Of course, more people felt that Grey must have relied on some kind of magical weapon to be able to do so. However, even if he relied on a magical weapon, being able to contend with the desolate blood warriors at such a young age was already extremely extraordinary. Your Excellency Grey, if you have time in the future, please come to the Addison family for a visit. The potential that Grey had displayed made the eyes of many forces light up. Now that he could contend with the desolate blood warriors, his future achievements would definitely not be low. Some families expressed goodwill to Grey, such as the Addison family, the Kenneth family, the Cumberland family, and so on. However, some families maintained a distance from Grey because of the Nahum family. Although the Nahum family had given up on dealing with Grey because of Sophia, the Nahum family would probably not give up so easily. After all, Sophia was a princess without any real power. When she was present, she could naturally intimidate the Nahum family. However, if she was not present, she might not be able to intimidate the Nahum family. Grey, your injuries? Earl Fergus, Zero, Polly, and the others surrounded Grey. Looking at the wounds all over his body, they were both worried and shocked. Although they knew that Grey was extremely powerful, they did not expect Grey to be so powerful that he could actually contend with a desolate blood warrior. I'm fine. They're all minor injuries. Grey shook his head and then looked at Sophia, who was walking over. Many thanks. No need. Sophia frowned and warned him. Be careful in the future. The Nahum family will probably not let this matter rest. I understand. Grey nodded solemnly. He could naturally see that the Nahum family would not let this matter rest so easily. However, the current situation was far less troublesome than before. After today's incident, the Nahum family would definitely not dare to openly attack the Fergus family. Otherwise, it would incur the wrath of the public. The biggest possibility was that they would secretly attack him. With the forbidden artifact and spatial teleportation, he believed that he would give them a surprise when the time came. There were 3 people besides Sophia. One of them was the bearded man, Teresa. There were also 2 young women named Elaine and Julie. They were all Grey's acquaintances. Among them, the bearded man Teresa said, "What a jerk. There are rumors that the Nahum family likes to take things by force. I thought it was just a rumor. I didn't expect it to be true." In the following days, the storm caused by Grey gradually subsided. All attention was directed to the great enemy, the Flame Kingdom. While paying close attention to the movements of the Flame Kingdom, several high-level aristocratic meetings had been held. Grey did not participate in such meetings. Although he was qualified in terms of strength, his status was far from enough. After all, he was only a descendant of an aristocratic family. On this day, the Purple Moon Kingdom's aristocratic alliance finally made a move. They left Neum City and split into 3 groups, attacking the Flame Kingdom's alliance from 3 different directions. Two of the groups, the Neum family and the Addison family, each led 2 Marquis family and more than 10 small aristocratic families to attack the Flame Kingdom's alliance from the flank. The remaining group consisted of the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family, the Kenneth family, the remaining 3 Marquis family, and many small aristocratic families. They formed the main force to attack the Flame Kingdom's alliance from the front. Gray's Sydney family was in this group. Chapter 388. Thump, 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 thump. A troop of more than 200,000 people was marching rapidly across the boundless plains. This was a shocking scene. As far as the eye could see, there were people wearing armor and holding weapons. Some of them were riding on war horses, while others were walking on foot. It was like a wave surging forward, sweeping forward. Among them, the elites of the aristocratic families were at the front of the cavalry. They were wearing excellent war armor and riding expensive war horses. Some of them were even riding blood fiends. There was a 3-meter-long berserk blood fiend named Galewolf with green fur all over its body. There was a 5-meter-long berserk blood fiend named Rockbull with rock-like skin. There was a 3-meter-long berserk blood fiend named Ice Tiger with white fur all over its body. Although it was difficult to obtain a blood fiend cub, it was still possible for some aristocratic families with rich resources and exclusive hunting teams. Thump, thump, thump. The blood fiend's footsteps were as heavy as drums, causing the ground to shake slightly. The blood fiends were supposed to fight to the death when they encountered each other. However, under the control of their riders, they maintained a safe distance from each other and moved forward peacefully. Among them, the people from Sydney Hill were the most eye-catching. There were a total of 5 barbaric-level blood fiends. The smallest of them was 5 meters long, while the largest was 7 meters long. Their scales flickered and their hair was thick. They either walked on all fours or stood on 2 feet. They emitted a sound that was like the beating of a drum, causing people to be intimidated by them. However, they were not the most eye-catching. Among the troops, the most eye-catching was the direction of the royal family, followed by the Kenneth family. All the members of the royal family were riding blood fiends. Even some of the soldiers and generals were riding blood fiends. These blood fiends were of high levels. Among them, there were even 6, 8 to 9 meters long desolate-level blood fiends. Its enormous size and height made it stand out from the crowd of blood fiends like a crane in a flock of chickens. Their scales were as large as palm leaf fans and looked like metal. A terrifying aura was emitted from their bodies, causing the surrounding blood fiends to avoid them and keep a distance from them. There were also many blood fiends in the Kenneth family's troop. Their levels were generally high. Although they were not as exaggerated as the royal families, there were still 2 desolate-level blood fiends. Desolate-level blood fiend Hurricane Sheep. Desolate-level blood fiend Giant Rock Crocodile. Desolate-level blood fiend Forest Ape. Sitting on the iron arm barbarian ape's shoulder, Gray's gaze swept past the 8 desolate-level blood fiends one by one, and his eyes were filled with unconcealable shock. Compared to other families, the royal family and the Kenneth family were indeed much more powerful. Not only did they have desolate-level blood beasts, but they also had more than one. Gray speculated that the royal family might even have king-level blood fiends. However, that level of combat power was simply too terrifying. They didn't dare to enter the battlefield easily. After all, once they entered the battlefield, the enemy would definitely enter a similar level of combat power. This would cause the battle to escalate and the casualties on both sides would be even more disastrous. The army was like a tidal wave, and the commotion they caused was like a tsunami. Many wild beasts and birds were frightened into fleeing in all directions, not knowing where to go in their panic. A few hours later, a huge city came into view. This was a city with walls made of black stone. It was extremely large and majestic, like a black mountain standing on the plains. Thunder Buddha City was the 3rd largest city in Duke Neum's territory. However, it had already been occupied by the Flame Kingdom and was used as a frontline stronghold. Woo woo! With such a huge commotion, it was impossible for the Flame Kingdom's coalition army not to notice it. Along with the desolate woo, the city gate of Thunder Buddha City opened. A large number of the Flame Kingdom's coalition army poured out like rolling dark clouds, and finally gathered into an army of more than 200,000 people. This was an elite army that had been baptized by slaughter. Everyone was exuding a murderous aura. Even the ordinary soldiers had a strong murderous aura. The strong murderous aura gathered together and covered the sky, as if it had dyed the sky red. It pressed down on the Purple Moon Kingdom's coalition army. The front part of the army was cavalry, while the rear part was infantry. At the front of the cavalry, there were also many blood fiends, just like the Purple Moon Kingdom's coalition army. Some of them were exceptionally large, and if there were no surprises, they should be desolate level blood fiends. 1, 2, 3, 13. Someone was counting the number of suspected desolate level blood fiends, and his face gradually turned pale. In the Flame Kingdom's coalition army, there were a total of 13 suspected desolate level blood fiends. Although the number of desolate level blood fiends did not represent all of the desolate level combat power, as the wild blood warriors could not be identified with the naked eye. However, such a large number was still shocking. There are 5 more blood fiends. Gray could not help but be shocked. When he saw that the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family and the Kenneth family had a total of 8 desolate level blood fiends, he was already very shocked. However, he did not expect the number of desolate level blood fiends in the Flame Kingdom to be even more terrifying. There were a total of 13 of them, which was 5 more blood fiends than his side. Flame Kingdom, you've gone too far. In the Purple Moon Kingdom, an old man stood on a bull-shaped desolate level blood fiend with a spear in his hand. He looked at the Flame Kingdom's coalition army, and his voice was filled with anger. Although there was a distance of 100 meters between them, his voice was as loud as a bell and could be heard clearly. This was not the blood fiend's ability, but the result of his strong physique. His extraordinary physique allowed him to have a lung capacity that far exceeded that of an ordinary person. Naturally, his voice was also much louder than an ordinary person's. Overboard? I don't think so. Compared to the humiliation that the Flame Kingdom's royal family suffered, it's not worth mentioning. In the Flame Kingdom, an old man's mocking voice was heard. He was more than 2 meters tall, and he held a battle axe in his hand. He stepped on a huge desolate level blood fiend lizard and wore a yellow metal armor. His body was filled with a terrifying aura. The Purple Moon Kingdom has been very polite to the Flame Kingdom's royal family. What more do you want from the Flame Kingdom? In the Purple Moon Kingdom, another old man standing on a desolate level blood fiend asked. If the first princess or the second princess is married to His Highness Nichols of the Flame Kingdom, the Flame Kingdom will immediately withdraw its army. The old man from the Flame Kingdom, who was wearing metal armor and holding a battle axe, said, "Dream on." The old man on the bull-shaped desolate level blood fiend roared. His voice was filled with anger. If the Purple Moon Kingdom married the first princess or the second princess to the Flame Kingdom's royal family because of the Flame Kingdom's coercion, it would definitely become a disgrace to the entire Purple Moon Kingdom. Since you're unwilling, then there's nothing more to say. Let's just fight our way to the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal capital. In the Flame Kingdom, another old man said coldly, "You've gone too far. Arrogant. You want the 2 princesses to marry the Flame Kingdom's royal family? Dream on." The Purple Moon Kingdom was filled with furious roars. Some of the young nobles were so angry that their faces were flushed red, and their weapons were clenched tightly. If the other party succeeded in forcing them, not only would it be a disgrace to the Purple Moon Kingdom's royal family, but it would also be a disgrace to the Purple Moon Kingdom's nobles. Then there's nothing more to say. Let me see how much the Purple Moon Kingdom has improved after more than a decade. An old man from the Flame Kingdom said coldly, "Charge." As he waved his hand, the Flame Kingdom's allied army charged towards the Purple Moon Kingdom's allied army. The cavalry was in front, and the infantry was at the back. Like rolling rocks, there were sounds of landslides and tsunamis. At the very front was a horde of terrifying blood fiends. Among them, there were 13 blood fiends that were over 8 meters long. Every step they took caused the earth to tremble and the mountains to shake. It was as if heaven and earth were about to flip over. Charge! On the side of the Purple Moon Kingdom's allied army, there was also an old man who gave the order. Then, the Purple Moon Kingdom's allied army surged out like a tidal wave, charging towards the Flame Kingdom's allied army with a movement that was not inferior to that of the Flame Kingdom's allied army. Kill those bastards from the Flame Kingdom! Fight for the kingdom! Many of them were filled with murderous intent, and their faces were filled with anger. They were all infuriated by the unreasonable request of the Flame Kingdom. The rising anger turned into their murderous intent, making them look ferocious. Even the noble young masters, who were usually gentle, could not help but look ferocious at this moment. Is this the battlefield? Standing on top of the purple blood fiends that were charging forward, Gray did not feel afraid. Instead, he felt excited and full of fighting spirit. He was a rather rational person, but at this moment, he could not help but be affected by the atmosphere of the battlefield and become full of fighting spirit. The bronze-level sword-type weapon that he took from Warner Nahum let out a crisp sound in his hand, as if it was responding to his fighting spirit. Chapter 389. Boom! The two desolate-level blood fiends collided with each other, creating an earth-shattering tremor. It was as if heaven and earth were about to be overturned. The ox-type desolate-level blood fiend lowered its head. Its huge horns were like sharp blades as it charged towards the lizard desolate-level blood fiend. The lizard desolate-level blood fiend's sharp claws glinted coldly as it clawed at the ox-type blood fiend. At the same time, it spat out blazing flames from its mouth, causing blood to splatter everywhere. On top of the two desolate-level blood fiends, the spear-wielding elder from the Purple Moon Kingdom and the axe-wielding elder from the Flame Kingdom were also fighting. The axe-wielding elder from the Flame Kingdom swung his axe downwards, creating a huge crescent-shaped wind blade. On the other hand, the spear-wielding elder from the Purple Moon Kingdom thrust his spear forward, shattering the crescent-shaped wind blade. With their current strength, even if the blood fiends below them were fighting, they could still stand on top of them as if they were walking on flat ground. Boom, boom, boom. Almost at the same time as the two of them clashed, the other desolate-level blood fiends and the people on top of them were also clashing with each other. The sound of the explosion was like a sudden clap of thunder. The terrifying shockwaves were like blooming fireworks. It was gorgeous and eye-catching, but at the same time, extremely dangerous. This danger was not only aimed at the people fighting, but also at the people nearby. Poof! A huge wind blade rushed into the cavalry of the Flame Kingdom. Immediately, more than 10 cavalrymen and their horses were split in half. Their intestines and internal organs flowed out as blood splattered everywhere. The ground was like an overturned vat of red dye. Crackle, crackle! The aftermath of a lightning bolt rushed into the cavalry of the Purple Moon Kingdom. Immediately, more than 20 cavalrymen and their horses collapsed and turned into charcoal. Even the aftermath of a desolate-level attack was destructive to the surroundings. Kill, kill, kill! The cavalrymen of the Purple Moon Kingdom and Flame Kingdom, as well as the infantrymen behind them, were also clashing with each other. Battle cries rose and fell one after another. Blood splattered everywhere as lives were lost. A cavalryman from the Purple Moon Kingdom stabbed a cavalryman from the Flame Kingdom in the heart with his spear, knocking him off his horse. However, in the next moment, the cavalryman let out a blood-curdling scream as his head flew into the air and his headless corpse rolled off his horse. One of the Flame Kingdom's soldiers sneered coldly. But in the next moment, a flash of sword light flashed past, and he and his warhorse were split into two halves. Human lives were as worthless as grass. This was the truest portrayal of this battlefield. Patter! The purple blood fiend that Gray was riding crashed into a berserk-level blood fiend of the Flame Kingdom. The berserk power of the collision sent the berserk-level blood fiend and the berserk warrior riding it flying backward, covered in blood. Before the berserker could stand up from the ground, Gray sent out a wind blade in front of him, cutting the berserker in half. As for the blood fiend, its neck was bitten off by the purple blood fiend's sharp teeth. Blood splattered all over the ground. Whoosh! An orange-red flame with scorching heat shot towards Gray like a meteor falling from the sky. Standing on the purple blood fiend, Gray didn't move. A stream of cold air shot out like a mist dragon and crashed into the orange-red flame, extinguishing it immediately. It didn't stop moving forward and crashed into a berserk warrior from the Flame Kingdom riding a blood fiend, freezing the berserk warrior and his mount into an ice sculpture. After the cold air, a wind blade slashed across and split the berserk warrior's body into two halves under the ice. Driving the purple blood fiend, Gray attacked one of the Flame Kingdom's cavalrymen after another. A huge cold mist dragon swept out, and more than a dozen Kingdom of Raging Flames fiercely blood warriors on warhorses were instantly turned into ice sculptures and died along with their mounts. A bolt of lightning flashed and a berserk warrior from the Flame Kingdom who was charging towards Gray with a blade suddenly fell to the ground. A 10-meter-long wind blade slashed out, and several ferocious warriors charging at Gray were immediately cleaved in half and fell to the ground. Every time he attacked, someone would inevitably bleed and fall. Not a single enemy could withstand a single attack from him. Corpses of Flame Kingdom's berserk warriors fell one after another around Gray. Fresh blood dyed the ground beneath the purple blood fiend red. The soil had become wet and there were even bits of flesh mixed into it. Gray stood on the purple blood fiend, his thick murderous aura like a coat draped over his body. In the eyes of those from the Flame Kingdom who died under his attacks, he was definitely a malevolent god of death. It wasn't that he was cruel and bloodthirsty, but that this was a battlefield and there was no room for mercy. If he didn't kill, he and his companions would be killed. Clatter, clatter, clatter! Gray's valiant performance quickly attracted the attention of the Flame Kingdom's berserk warriors. A middle-aged man wearing metal armor riding on a berserk-level blood fiend rushed towards Gray. Several earth spikes silently rose from the ground and pierced towards the purple blood fiend. At the same time, a green light that was several meters long suddenly spread out from the blade in the middle-aged man's hand. It emitted an extremely sharp aura and slashed towards Gray. Gray's fighting spirit was boiling. The sword in his hand vibrated, and then a violent bolt of lightning wrapped around the sword. It also spread to several meters long and collided with the huge green blade. Gray's power was inherited from the purple blood fiend and could reach the special level of the berserk level. The power of the lightning-wrapped sword was obviously stronger than the green blade of the middle-aged man. Boom! The green light wrapped around the middle-aged man's blade was shattered. The lightning-wrapped sword continued to slash towards the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man dodged and dodged the sword. However, the berserk-level blood fiend he was riding on had its head chopped off by the lightning. While Gray and the middle-aged man were fighting, the purple blood fiend that Gray was riding on smashed the earth spikes with its claws. Its terrifying power instantly shattered the earth spike. Then, the purple blood fiend rushed forward and crashed into the middle-aged man. The middle-aged man slashed at the purple blood fiend but didn't leave a single wound. Instead, he was knocked back continuously. Whoosh! A green river appeared and drowned the middle-aged man who couldn't dodge in time. Visible wounds appeared on the middle-aged man's body. Many of them were so deep that his bones could be seen. When the green river disappeared, the middle-aged man was covered in wounds and looked extremely miserable. He was frozen in ice. Without giving the middle-aged man a chance to break free from the ice, Gray's sword, which was surrounded by surging lightning, became several meters long and slashed at the middle-aged man's neck. Instantly, half of the middle-aged man's neck was severed. At this point, the middle-aged man finally broke free from the ice on his body. However, all he could do was cover his bleeding throat. He couldn't even scream in pain. After killing his opponent, Grey looked at the situation of Earl Fergus and the others. Earl Fergus was riding on a bear-type berserk-level blood fiend. Relying on the berserk-level blood fiend's destructive power, he smashed a berserk-level blood fiend and a blood warrior riding on it into meat paste. Zara was fighting with a young noble of the Flame Kingdom who was about the same age as him. Both of them were injured. Polly was fighting with an ordinary berserk blood warrior and had the upper hand. Bernal was riding on Han Hu and killing ordinary soldiers. Every time he swung his sword, an ordinary soldier would be killed. In the vicinity of Earl Fergus and the other 3 berserk-level blood fiends under Grey's control were rampaging. They were brave and invincible, attracting all the powerful enemies to them. As a result, the opponents of Earl Fergus and the others were not too strong. As for the 3 berserk-level blood fiends, there was no need to worry too much. At this point in time, the 3 berserk-level blood fiends had metallized and their defense was comparable to that of a silver-armored rhinoceros. Even if they were besieged by multiple enemies, there were not too many injuries on their bodies. He then looked in another direction and his expression froze. This is not good. I don't know when the other 2 teams will arrive. The Flame Kingdom had a total of 5 more Desolate-level blood fiends than the Purple Moon Kingdom. Although 2 of the Desolate-level blood fiends were blocked by the 2 wild blood warriors from the Purple Moon Kingdom, there were still 3 more Desolate-level blood fiends that were unmatched. One of the 3 Desolate-level blood fiends rushed into the ranks of the Purple Moon Kingdom and destroyed everything in its path. Corpses were left behind everywhere it went. People and blood fiends were constantly trampled to death under its iron hooves. Screams of agony continued. As for the other 2 Desolate-level blood fiends, they attacked the Purple Moon Kingdom's Desolate-level blood fiends and Desolate blood warriors. Immediately, the Purple Moon Kingdom's Desolate-level blood fiends and Desolate blood warriors were at a disadvantage. Whoosh! Whoosh! At this moment, the 2 wild blood warriors left their berserk-level mounts and rushed towards Grey with murderous intent. Grey could only withdraw his gaze and focus on his own battle. As for the overall situation of the battle, it was not something he needed to consider. He also did not have the kind of combat power that could influence the outcome of the battle. From the previous battle, the 2 wild blood warriors from the Flame Kingdom had already seen how powerful Grey was. Therefore, they attacked Grey together. A large amount of lightning appeared in front of one of them and attacked Grey in a meandering manner. As for the other person, a large number of shadow tentacles appeared nearby and turned into giant snakes that attacked Grey. The 2 of them attacked Grey from 2 different directions, one from the front and one from the back. Humph! Facing the attacks of the 2, Grimm's expression did not change. Near him, a long green river appeared and circled around him, wrapping him and the purple blood fiends in the middle. When the lightning struck the green river, it was as if a huge rock had been thrown into the river. It stirred up a wave before it finally calmed down. On the other hand, the shadow tentacles hit the green river and were quickly shredded by the wind blades in the green river. Cold air spread out and froze the shadow tentacles. The second level of the barbarian level. Seeing that Grey's blood beast ability had blocked their joint attack, the 2 barbarian blood warriors from the Blazing Flame Kingdom couldn't help but change their expressions. Putting aside the fact that the ability was strange, just its power alone was definitely at the second level of the barbarian level. The 2 of them were vigilant and wanted to pull away, but it was too late. Because at this moment the green river surrounding Grey moved. It split into 2 and attacked one of the wild blood warriors. The 2 wild blood warriors immediately used their blood fiends and wanted to destroy the green river. However, they were only able to destroy a part of the green river before they were hit by the green river. Under the impact of the green river, wounds appeared on their bodies. Many of the wounds were so deep that their flesh had disappeared and their bones could be seen. After the Green River disappeared, the two of them were frozen by the cold air of the Green River and turned into ice sculptures. Facing the frozen opponents, Gray calmly attacked with two more Green Rivers. When the Green River disappeared, large pieces of flesh on their bodies had disappeared. Even their internal organs had been shattered and they were dead. After killing his opponents, Gray did not even have time to take a breath before he heard a roar approaching. He saw two young men riding on barbarian-level blood fiends charging towards him with murderous intent. Their own blood fiends and the blood fiends' abilities, a total of 4 blood fiends' abilities were launched towards him. In an instant, he was surrounded by 4 barbarians. Chapter 390. The orange-yellow flames were like the sunset glow in the sky. The bluish-white lightning was like a giant, bare tree. The wind blades were like a long green saber. The black gas was as black as ink, like the gloomy clouds in the sky. Almost at the same time, the abilities of the 4 blood fiends attacked Gray and the purple blood fiend that Gray was sitting on. The ability to control allowed Gray and the purple blood fiend to cooperate very well. The purple blood fiend quickly ran to the side and dodged the black gas. The black gas hit the ground and a sizzling sound was heard. A large area where the purple blood fiend had been was corroded by the black gas. Whether it was grass or gravel, everything was being melted. Even the metal weapons that had fallen from the battle were no exception. This was a highly corrosive poison ability. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. As soon as they dodged the black gas, the green wind blades arrived one after another. The purple blood fiend raised its leg and extended its sharp claws, slashing at the green wind blades. Its sharp claws were like magical weapons, instantly slicing apart the green wind blades that were coming at it. At this moment, the flames and lightning were approaching. Whoosh! Gray made his move. A green river appeared and blocked the flames and lightning. The flames and lightning rolled in the Green River, but they were eventually extinguished by the Green River. Do you still remember us? 2 young men riding on barbarian-level blood fiends surrounded Gray. They did not attack immediately. Instead, they looked at Gray coldly. One of the young men had a head full of blue hair. He held a long spear in his hand, and his body was filled with a fierce aura. The other young man had a head full of gray hair. He was tall and had a sharp glint in his eyes when he blinked. "It's you." Gray recognized the 2 of them. To be precise, he had seen them before at the banquet that the royal family of the Purple Moon Kingdom had prepared for the visit of the Flame Kingdom. At that time, the gray-haired young man was already a barbarian blood warrior, while the blue-haired young man was a berserker blood warrior. He did not expect them to have become barbarian blood warriors. Don't you like to bully others with numbers? Today we will satisfy you. The gray-haired young man sneered. Last time, he had to admit defeat before the battle, which made him very sullen. It was not because he was not strong enough, but because the demonic weapon that his opponent had was too terrifying. He could actually control 4 barbarian-level blood fiends. But now, the situation had reversed. There was only 1 person and 1 beast beside the other party, while there were 2 people and 2 beasts on their side. This kind of battle situation that was completely different from before made him feel refreshed in his heart, and the grievances that had accumulated were completely released. Attack! The gray-haired young man sneered and attacked. Gray was sitting on a barbarian-level blood beast. Its entire body was covered in bluish-white scales. It was the Thunderfall beast, a barbarian-level blood beast. With a roar, a bolt of lightning descended from the sky like countless branches of a tree and attacked Gray and the purple-colored blood beast. At the same time, he activated his wind-type blood fiend ability. Dozens of huge wind blades attacked Gray and the purple blood hand. On the other side, the blue-haired young man sat on a blood beast that was covered in black scales. It was unknown what kind of blood beast it was. It opened its mouth and spat out a jet of black corrosive smoke toward Gray and the purple-colored blood beast. At the same time, He controlled a long river of flames that burned toward Gray. Humph! Gray snorted. A long green river appeared with the purple-colored blood beast as the center, forming a circle and then spreading in all directions. It was like a huge water column that suddenly fell from a high place and collided with the lightning, vines, poisonous smoke, and flames. This was a well-matched collision. Although the icy wind blades were powerful, they were after all against the attacks of 4 barbarian-level blood fiends. Violent destruction occurred at the places where the blades collided. The surrounding ground looked as if it had been burned by fire, struck by lightning, corroded, and slashed by sharp blades. Potholes were everywhere. Then, all of a sudden, all of them exploded. The aftermath of the lightning, flames, ice, wind blades, and poisonous smoke, as well as the fragments of the wind blades, spread in all directions. A few cavalrymen from the Purple Moon Kingdom were contaminated by the poisonous smoke. Their flesh was instantly corroded at a visible rate, and in the end, nothing was left of them. A few cavalrymen from the Flame Kingdom were silently cut into pieces by the broken wind blades. More than 10 cavalrymen from the Purple Moon Kingdom and the Raging Flame Kingdom were struck by lightning and flames. Some of them were burnt to ashes, some of them were charred black, and some of them fell to the ground with bloody holes. When several barbarians fought, even the aftermath of the Blood Fiend's abilities was extremely terrifying. It was enough to kill a ferocious blood warrior. If a berserk blood warrior was careless, he might also be killed by the aftermath. Boom, boom, boom. Gray, the gray-haired young man, and the blue-haired young man continued to fight. The Blood Fiend's abilities from both sides continued to collide, and the aftermath continued to spread in all directions. The cavalrymen from the Flame Kingdom and the Purple Moon Kingdom, who were originally fighting nearby, retreated as if they were avoiding snakes and scorpions. With the place where the 3 of them were fighting as the center, a hollow area appeared in the surrounding dozens of meters. To be able to form a hollow area in the middle of the battlefield was not something that could be easily done. It could be seen that the destructive power displayed by the 3 of them was very strong. Damn it, how can his Blood Fiend's abilities still be so destructive after reaching the barbarian level? Didn't they say that the amplification would weaken after reaching the barbarian level? The aftermath of the explosion did not only affect the people around them. Gray, the blue-haired young man, and the gray-haired young man were the first to bear the brunt of the impact. The gray-haired young man and the blue-haired young man retreated while brandishing their weapons to block the aftermath of the Blood Fiend's abilities. Gray was only one person, but he used his Blood Fiend's abilities to block the attacks of the 2 men and 2 beasts, which made the 2 of them extremely shocked. Originally, according to Prince Nikel's deduction, when the opponent's mixed abilities reached the barbarian level, it was very likely that it would turn into a single ability. Even if it was still a mixed ability, its power would not be able to cross levels. But now, what appeared in front of the 2 of them was not just a single ability. Its power could cross levels and reach the 2nd level of the barbarian level. This made the 2 of them feel that the battle was out of their control. Oh no. It was at this moment that Gray and the Purple Blood Beast made a move that startled the 2 of them, causing them to be on high alert. In the face of the oncoming aftermath of the Blood Fiend's abilities, the man and the beast did not dodge. Instead, they rushed forward. Clang, clang, clang. The aftermath of the Blood Fiend's abilities hit the man and the beast, but the sound of metal clashing could be heard. Even when the corrosive mist hit their bodies, it did not leave a single trace of corrosion. After rushing out of the range of the aftermath of the Blood Fiend's abilities, Gray looked coldly at the blue-haired young man. The green river collided with the blue-haired young man, and he also rushed forward quickly. The blue-haired young man's expression changed. The Blood Fiend he was sitting on spewed out poisonous gas, and the young man himself was covered in flames. However, the power of the Green River was obviously much stronger. The flames were extinguished, and the corrosive poisonous gas was worn out. The Green River hit the blue-haired young man. Puff, puff, puff. Wounds appeared on the blue-haired young man and the blood fiend he was sitting on, and the ground was frozen by ice. At this moment, Gray and the purple blood fiend arrived. The purple blood fiend violently hit the blood fiend the blue-haired young man was sitting on, and Gray slashed at the blue-haired young man with his long sword. The blue-haired young man and the blood fiend both had deep wounds on their bodies, and they were sent flying backward. Gray and the purple blood fiend continued to pursue, preparing to kill the man and the beast. But at this moment, swoosh, 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 crackle, crackle, dozens of huge wind blades and barren giant trees attacked, blocking their path. Gray and the purple blood fiend had no choice but to stop. The green river shattered the wind blades and lightning, but at this moment, the blue-haired young man and the blood fiend had already broken free from the ice. However, their bodies were covered in wounds, and there was even a long scar on his handsome face, almost splitting his face in half. "You deserve to die." Touching the huge wound on his face, the blue-haired young man's face twisted. Although a scar was a man's metal, such a huge scar on his face had obviously disfigured him. He roared, and the long spear in his hand suddenly flashed with a beautiful light. Then, a huge orange flame pillar shot out from his long spear and attacked Gray. As a descendant of the Duke's family of the Flame Kingdom, he naturally had a powerful magic weapon in his hands. However, he did not use it immediately because activating such a magic weapon would consume too much of his blood energy. Especially in a battlefield like this, he had to maintain his blood energy at all times. But now, he could not care so much. Because of his disfigurement, if he did not use his strongest combat power, he might die at the hands of his opponent. Whoosh! Seeing the huge flame pillar whizzing towards him, Gray's eyes narrowed, and the green river collided with it. Boom! An explosion that was much louder than the previous collision rang out. The green river exploded, and the huge pillar of flame was extinguished at the same time. A huge shockwave spread out in all directions, crashing into Gray and the purple blood fiend, forcing them to take a few steps back. The power of the second level of the barbarian level. This is a magic weapon at the peak of the bronze level. To be able to shatter the green river, the power of the flame pillar had obviously reached the second level of the barbarian level. This meant that the magic weapon in his opponent's hand must also be at the peak of the bronze level. In terms of destructive power, his opponent was not weaker than him. Before Gray and the purple blood fiend could catch their breaths, suddenly whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. From the other side, a large number of plant spears appeared. Each spear was more than 10 meters long, and they whizzed towards Gray and the purple blood fiend. The purple blood fiend dodged in succession, and the plant spears fell to the ground one by one. Immediately, a huge crater appeared on the ground, as if a meteorite had crashed into it. Gravel flew in all directions like cannonballs. This was also an attack at the peak of the second level.